Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Good evening, dissidents, one and all. Welcome to a Sunday night edition of Do Dissidents Podcast. My name is Keaton Weiss. Here from Greece is Russell Dobular.
Opa!
There we go. I thought there was a little delay there. Maybe there was. There wasn't for a while, but Opa indeed. So you were on the Greek islands. Now you're back on the mainland. Is that right? Or are you on a larger island?
I'm on a larger island. I'm on Crete. I'm a Cretan.
Russell is a literal Cretan this evening.
Literally, temporarily. We're all Cretans now.
We're all Cretans now. All in the same boat. That's right. So, folks, thank you very much for being here. Big crowd filing in already. 283 strong in the YouTube chat. Last update from Jake, our producer, said about 70 filing in over on Rumble. That's what we love to see. Please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button wherever you guys are. We're going to show you a little bit of where Russell is. Russell coming to us remotely for the next couple weeks, and then you'll be back in good old New York in early October. But here's some of the scenery out there. Little something going on. I mean, it's beautiful, but it looks a little weired. You join any groups while you're out there?
Yeah. So listen, I looked back at the chat last time, and I saw people were like, "Oh, Russ is scared of Greek witches," because I was talking about I found this shit at the top of the mountain on Delos. I'm finding these everywhere. I went on. It's like the thing to do on Santorini is this hike from Thera to Oya to see this beautiful, legendary sunset over the caldera of the volcano. Apparently, Santorini is actually the only habitated. How do you say it?
Inhabited?
Only inhabited. That's it. I'm tired. It's the only habitated.
It's going to be a long show. You can tell I'm going to have to do the heavy lifting on this one.
You're going to have to. It's the only inhabited caldera in the world. Because of the caldera, it just has this legendary sunset. So you have this hike up through these mountains and shit. And dude, I kept finding that. So you got some Greek witches out there maintaining the old ways, worshiping Artemis. They're doing something out there, man. They get a little witchy with it out here.
Beautiful though. Look at that. Look at that blue sky. Look at how blue the sky is. We don't have water that blue in our parts.
All right. So understand. Okay. So what you're looking at in the distance, that's the volcano that made the island. So basically, right. Santorini is this crescent around the volcano that made Santorini. It's just absolutely beautiful. Like you do that whole, like if you look to the right side, that's where I hiked to catch that sunset at the end.
Yeah. Beautiful scenery. Yeah, that's a good shot too.
Yeah, you have all these. It's interesting. Their churches, especially coming right from Italy, where all the churches are like, okay, how big could you possibly make a church? It's all these. It's like that. It's all these like little tiny one-room churches all over the islands. So it's very interesting, very beautiful.
Looks great. Looks fantastic. And, we'll have more photos to show you guys all on Wednesday. I'll tell you a little story today. I went to Walmart today to replace my garbage can. That's my exciting story for the day. But it's actually more exciting than you think. People... it's a favored term of this online left space, psyop, right? We always talk about this is a psyop, that's a psyop. I'll tell you what a psyop is, okay? So I bought a new garbage can for this new apartment. It was this kind of tall, narrow garbage can, and I figured it was not the most practical choice of garbage can when I bought it because, we're a family of 4... plus a dog and a cat, we generate a lot of garbage. And so I figured, it's not the most practical choice, but we'll live with it, because it's tall, it's thin, so it's easy to place, But it turns out it was just horrible because when it's tall and thin, you just can't fit stuff in there. The stuff that's too wide, you have to jam down, and then you fit 4 things in there, and then you got to cram it down, and then the bag rips. And then all these worms start forming in your giant garbage can because the garbage bag opens up. So I said, all right, today I'm replacing this garbage can. So I get one that's bigger and it's wider and it's more practical. It's a 14.5-gallon drum in the garbage can. Of course, what do you need when you get a garbage can? You need garbage bags, right? So I go to buy garbage bags, and the garbage bag sizes are a psyop, okay? This is what they do this to fuck with you, okay? The standard garbage bag size for a household garbage tin is 13-gallon bag. I have a 14.5-gallon drum. So if you put a 13-gallon bag in a 14.5-gallon drum, it's going to strain and stretch, and then it's going to rip if something too heavy goes in there. So I say, okay, I need the next size bigger, right? The next size bigger, you'd think they'd have a 15-gallon bag, an 18-gallon bag, a 21-gallon bag, a 24-gallon bag. No, the next size up from 13 is 30-gallon bag. So if you don't go for the 13-gallon bag, you got to spring for the 30-gallon bag, which is like an industrial-sized bag. And then you got to wrap it around 3 times. Otherwise, it's going to droop all over the place. That is done just to fuck with you. There's no other reason. Why can't we have a mid-sized garbage bag? Why does it have to be 13, which is way too small, or 30, which is way too big? That's intentional. That's intentional.
That was
this is how they drive you crazy, folks. It's not the big things. It's not the big things. It's not the Building 7. I mean, it is the Building 7 in that example, but it's the But on a regular basis, they get you. On a regular basis, they get you with the small things. They drive you crazy with the small things. 13 to 30. That should not be the jump. Should not be the jump. We need mid-sized bags. We need an 18-gallon. 18 makes sense. 18-gallon garbage bag makes sense.
That's actually, I have a copy of the Federalist Papers that I keep on my nightstand, and Madison and Hamilton actually went back and forth about that. That's actually the reason. They decided that there shouldn't be an intermediate garbage bag size. It was something about the farmers in Massachusetts, and it was going to interfere with their monopoly on burlap sacks or something. But that's actually why. That's actually why. They also had a clause that you could only have 8 hamburger buns in a bag. That's why it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. See, Courtney's with me. Courtney's with me, and Sean is with me. See, our supporters are with me. See, the people who support the show with their YouTube membership, and Courtney's a patron, so is Sean. You guys get us. You guys get us. That's why you support the show. That's why you're loyal. Because you understand us. You understand us. That's a segment I was floating to Russ. I pitched that segment to Russ before the show. Maybe in addition to or instead of Sunday Funnies, we do PSYOP Sundays, where every Sunday I come up with a petty grievance that I blame on the CIA as intentional, trying to drive us crazy. Death by 1,000 cuts. That's how they get you.
I will say, every time I leave the country, and look, I freely say I haven't been to countries that are war zones or where there's, horrific civil strife. I haven't been to places with those kinds of very extreme conditions. So I'll grant you that. But anytime I leave America, anywhere that I've ever gone, it's like this cloud of bad juju lifts. There is just bad energy in that country. And when you get out, you can feel it. You can palpably feel that bad energy just not on you. You just feel that pressure is gone. And a big part of it is the way the media drives a conversation that's all culture war based and conflict based, and they're just constantly trying to press your fear and anger centers, right, and get you into these meaningless debates. And then the whole like how do we preserve our empire kind of vibe, like, yeah, obviously that doesn't come up other places. Not to mention the fact that, yeah, it's a sad statement that at this point I don't think anybody even pays attention anymore, but that constant litany of mass shootings is definitely playing on your perception of your environment. And when you go pretty much anywhere else in the world, that's not on the menu, right? They're not talking about these constant horrific mass shootings. They're not having these culture war debates. And yeah, you know, I'm not trying to paint a picture. Every place else is perfect. No place is perfect, but America is uniquely fucked up as advanced industrial economies go. Like, there's really no place in its weight class economically and technologically that is so backward, fucked up, and unhealthy psychologically and physically. This was one of the things I was curious about. Would I feel better eating the food over here? Yeah, definitely. And it's not like I'm eating health food. Like, I was curious, like, if you eat like pastas and things that would usually make you kind of logy, are you going to feel different? Yeah. I do not feel that way when I eat those things here.
Well, I mean, I can see that being an American thing versus an Italian thing, but Greek food happens to be some of, I think, the best food in the world. I love Greek food because it's simple ingredients, meat, vegetables, protein. It's very healthy. There's not a lot of dairy. I mean, some of the dips and things have dairy, but it's basically just meat, greens, and potatoes, right? A lot of lemon juice, a lot of oregano. It makes you feel very vital. Yeah. I love Greek
simple.
food. Yeah. Simple.
No, but even
grilled
in
food,
Italy,
sunlight. I mean, it's great. It's great.
Yeah, well, it's their wheat has a lower protein content than ours does. And also, God no, when you go look, you have a euro here. That pita is not going to be full of fucking corn syrup and whatever else they put in that shit in the United States. Like, you're just not getting all that crap. So even if you're eating something like a gyro, to consider kind of junk foody, right? It definitely does not hate you. I don't have like indigestion, like things that you feel when you're eating American food. Like, America is just really bad for you. Like, it's bad for you physically. It's bad for you mentally. It's a terrible, terrible place to live. And I'm not saying no place is worse. Like I said, I haven't been to conflict zones, and I know there are people in much worse circumstances around the world, but of comparable countries, there's nothing like the United States. It truly is the freak show of the Western world.
Indeed. Kinky tzatziki sauce, yum. Yeah, absolutely. Cucumber and the dill and the yogurt. It's so refreshing. It makes you feel so up. Greek food just makes you feel up. It makes you feel good. By the way, folks, for those who are saying, all right, come on, get to the point, I'm telling you right now, that garbage can bit is better than anything we have on the docket on the show. It's not going to get better. It's only going to get worse from there. So just, You don't know what you
Repeat.
got till it's gone, as the lyric goes, right? So, be happy with what you got so far. Indeed.
When the cultural historians go back through our old videos, they are going to peg that as the moment the show peaked.
Yeah,
The garbage
that will be
can
the peak of the show. The garbage can peak. Yeah, exactly. Folks, thank you for being here. We got some super chats. We got a Rockfin tip. Rumble rants are always welcome. I know because of everything that's going on with Russell Brand and Rumble, standing their grounds, in terms of advertisers and things like that. A lot of people have tweeted at us and some peers in our space, hey, why don't you switch over to Rumble entirely? Well, look, we cannot afford to do the show for free, unfortunately. Time that we spend doing the show means time spent prepping the show. Time spent prepping the show is time that I'm not driving my car, delivering people's lunch. And so if you want us to rely on Rumble more, hit us up with those Rumble rants over there if you got them. Hit us up with them. That's the way it's going to happen, because we would love to be independently wealthy and be able to do this for free. But alas, we cannot. So the super chats and the Rumble rants are what keep us afloat. So thank you all very much for your generosity. Let's start with some segments, shall we?
Let us.
All right. So first on the docket is a sort of follow-up from last time we had Russ tune in from abroad. We covered the climate march in New York City. The Sunrise Movement was in attendance there, obviously. The Sunrise Movement made a huge announcement this week. Breaking on September 20th, a few days back. President Biden announced he's formally establishing an American Climate Corps. An American Climate Corps from President Joe Biden. Wow. This is a major victory for our movement, our generation, and our fight for a Green New Deal. Here's what it means. The ACC, the American Climate Corps, is a visionary policy inspired by our movement's call for a CCC, Civilian Climate Corps, that'll put our generation to work in good-paying jobs to stop the climate crisis. Our vision for a Green New Deal is finally becoming a reality.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
I played that so Russell would hear it. Our soundboard is a little fakakta tonight on Russ's end. You guys heard that one twice. Sorry, I had to play that one twice for Russ. But anyway, from now on, I'll just hit him once.
There's like a 2-second delay on my end, so I don't hear sound clips until they're like 2 seconds.
Right, he doesn't really hear the sound drops until they repeat. This didn't happen overnight. We began the fight for a climate corps in 2020 and spent the last 3 years organizing our communities, protesting, building coalitions, and pushing our leaders to stand with our generation. Sunrisers marched over 666 miles from New Orleans to Houston and from Paradise, California to San Francisco, calling for a civilian climate corps. Hundreds more organized in protests and took our demand straight to the halls of power, blockading every entrance to the White House. We never stopped fighting. So what is this civilian climate corps? Well, here's whitehouse.gov saying what it is. This is from the White House site. Today, through his Investing in America agenda, President Biden is delivering on that commitment by taking executive action to launch the American Climate Corps. Here's the highlighted text. The American Climate Corps will mobilize a new diverse generation of more than 20,000 Americans. That's it? 20,000 Americans, putting them to work conserving and restoring our lands and waters, bolstering community resilience, deploying clean energy, implementing energy-efficient technologies, and advancing environmental justice, all while creating pathways to high-quality, good-paying, clean energy and climate resilience jobs in the public and private sectors after they complete their paid training.
I am altering the deal. Pray I don't alter it any further.
Exactly. So, Sunrise Movement got trolled for this a bit. Deservedly so. Here's Professor Zenkis. Where's your outrage at Biden's refusal to approve a climate emergency? You're frauds. No results from Sunrise Movement Nord Stream. Yes, if you search the Sunrise Movement's Twitter feed, you will not find the Nord Stream pipeline mentioned anywhere. Our friend Nick Cruz at RBN says Joe Biden is also the biggest eco-terrorist in human history. After blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline, are you ever going to discuss this? Apparently not. Or are you going to continue lying to young people by omission? So it looks like now they are fully on board for Biden once again. Didn't take long. He got them 20,000 Americans enlisted in the American Civilian Climate Corps. And this is part of what we talked about last time. It's part of what I talked about on the post-duopoly show. This is what I mean when I call this new green movement sort of religious in nature. You know, a lot of people who go to church every Sunday, they don't go to church actually believing that they have to go to church because there's a man in the sky watching over them and will send them to hell if they don't go. A lot of them go because the church is a place where they get to share their values with people who have similar values, and there's community around that, and they go and they check in and they talk with the neighbors and things like that, and they build community around certain values that they share, and they share them with other like-minded people. That's what a lot of these climate events are. I mean, because at a certain point...
Some of them have a fetish.
What's that?
Some of them have a nun fetish.
Well, yeah, that's true, and that's less prevalent at the sunrise marches, but
I wouldn't be so sure.
But that's a similar dynamic here at all of these climate events. I mean, to have this as a goal of whatever the past 3 or 4 years that you're now touting as this major accomplishment, that you're going to have 20,000 people trained up for new green energy jobs and new green energy careers. At that point, I mean, this is just religion. It's just mythology. It's just tradition that you're engaging in because you believe in eco-friendly policies, right? You believe in protecting the earth, or at least making the earth more comfortable for human beings to inhabit. As George Carlin said very famously, the planet will be fine without us. It's the people who are fucked when the shit hits the fan with all of this type of stuff. But that's what this is. I mean, the notion that 20,000 trainees into a civilian climate corps is going to make a dent in this problem that is obviously so much bigger and vaster than that, so much bigger and vaster than really anything we can imagine doing, is just nonsense. And this gets confused with climate denial. This is not climate denial. It's actually quite the opposite of climate denial. It's saying this is a problem much bigger than we are equipped to handle. And by we, I don't just mean the population at large. I mean the green movement. Like, it's not that reusable bags are not intrinsically better than single-use plastic bags. They are, obviously.
Well, it depends on the size.
The question is that difference that you're making enough to offset the catastrophic impact on the environment that the military-industrial complex wages every day, and that's only getting bigger with no opposition from groups like the Sunrise Movement, number one. And number two, even absent that, just this general trajectory that we've been on the past 50 years, we've only gotten closer to the edge in terms of environmental disaster. And so this civilian climate corps that now they're touting as this major transformative accomplishment, I mean, come on, take a step back. Take a step back. What are we talking about here? What are we talking about here? This is religion on an individual level. And just as is the case in many religions, you have gullible, true believers in the rank and file. And very oftentimes, not always, but very oftentimes, you have scam artists at the top. And that's what the green movement looks like more and more.
Oh. And that is great foreshadowing for some of our later coverage in this episode. Yeah, that's an interesting observation, because I would say that that's true across the board with the movements of this generation, frankly, and of this moment. In the absence of religion, a lot of these ideas have taken its place, and that's why they're so anti-rational. That's why they're so anti-fact, because they are there to fill the void left by the collapse of religious faith. People, You know, they don't go to church. They're not church-going Christians. They need to believe in something. Most people are not comfortable having no life outside of Tinder and Twitter. So they need to believe that they're part of something bigger. And once they stopped filling that role with religion, they filled it with a lot of theories about life that just don't hold up to any kind of meaningful scrutiny, whether it's gender, whether it's race, which we'll get into with the Kendi story, or whether it's climate. It's this wish casting tendency, which is something that we had kind of relegated to the world of religion, and we considered areas like this areas where we must apply scientific method and rational debate. And we've just thrown that all out the window. It's just become, find people who will tell you what you want to hear, who have some credentials, and there are always people like that around, and get them some funding, and then pretend that that's reality, even if the overwhelming majority of information goes against it. Just grab, 10% of the studies that have been funded by people friendly to your point of view, and just build your whole movement around it.
Well, also like religion. Oh, sorry, I thought you were done. We're on a bit of a delay, a lag. Go ahead.
Yeah. And in terms of the politics of it, this is why they say the Democratic Party is where movements go to die. As soon as you get in bed with those people, they render you toothless. So they're running around celebrating this really meaningless gesture that Biden's only making because he's going into an election season. That's why if he was going to do it by executive order, why didn't he do it 3 years ago? Why is he doing it now? He's doing it now because he's deeply unpopular. The college thing collapsing lost him a lot of youth support. So he's making this empty gesture of doing something on the climate that's just meaningless. And they're going to come back with, well, this is the limit of what we can do with executive order. So vote harder, people, vote harder. And well, come on, man. It's a joke. But also, this is part of the problem with NGOs. Once this becomes your living, you're incentivized to go along to get along, because the big money donors don't write checks when you're rocking the fucking boat. They write checks when you're making it look like they're doing a great job, right? That's when the donor class will write those checks. These people get paid. They're making salaries off this now. They don't want to fuck with the Biden administration. Being friendly with the Biden administration opens up those Bill Gates pockets.
Right. Well, I was also going to say, just like in religion, a lot of Christian teachings are good moral teachings, right? Just like it's good to care about the environment, right? Like, it's not that these ideas are necessarily wrong, but if you believe, as these people do, in the apocalyptic nature of the problem, how can you possibly spend 3 years lobbying for a 20,000 person task force, basically,
right.
and think that that is anywhere near sufficient to deal with the vastness of this problem? Like, it just doesn't make sense, right? Like, it just doesn't compute. Much in the same way that, like, look, I mean, I live a pretty family values life, right? I live the life of a lot of, Christian men. I don't need the rest of it to think like I believe in monogamy and commitment and all that. But I don't believe that I'm part of this cosmic struggle, right? I don't believe that me living that way is significant in any way that's bigger than myself. Much in the same way that, like, this, okay, fine, you want to train yourself in a green job? Go ahead. I mean, fine, God bless. Not a bad thing to do. I guess this climate core is, on balance, a good thing to do. But the idea that it's this major victory is just completely delusional in the way that in my opinion, deeply religious people can be, some of them, I don't want to speak in broad brushes because there are a lot of very serious Christians who I think approach it from a very sensible way, and it helps give them meaning in their life. And, that's fine. I'm not trying to trash people. What I'm saying is people who actually take literally the idea that they are part of this cosmic battle, right? That sense of grandiosity is, I think, similar amongst the most devout and dogmatic religious people as it is in some of these sunrise people who think that they've earned this major victory by getting this CCC passed.
Yeah, well, that's the problem with it, because their role is properly to be gadflies, to be these young people, the people who are going to suffer most, rebuking the political class. But now they've been absorbed by the political class, and I think as importantly, they've been absorbed by the donor class. Look, I've said this before, and I keep saying I really want to do this video essay about Boeing. Like what happened with Boeing with the 757 MAX, I believe it is. That was a big light bulb moment for me. I mean, not that I wasn't already pretty much there, but at this point, American institutions are so captured and so corrupted that they are a danger to the life of the citizens. The institutions that are supposed to protect you have been so captured by corporate interests that are trying to kill you that you really can't trust anything there anymore. You can't trust the medical industry. You can't trust the regulators of the medical industry. You can't trust the aviation's administration, man. They knew that plane was dangerous, and they let it go up and keep killing people until it became untenable. It was killing too many people. Then they finally fucking did something about it, and nobody went to jail for it. It still shocks me. So you look at the Sunrise Movement, and rather than being part of the solution, they're part of the problem, because they're helping the administration to pretend that something meaningful is getting done. Meanwhile, the incentives of capitalism, of this out-of-control capitalism we have, are destructive to the lives, not just of Americans, but of everyone on the planet. We have a runaway capitalist system that has captured the government, and now groups like the Sunrise Movement, they need groups like that to run cover for them. That's all they're doing. I don't think that's what they think they're doing, but that's exactly what they're doing. I'm sure, especially for a bunch of kids, it's very heady to get meetings with the White House. And
of course.
Yeah, you know what? We're going to take this idea and we're going to run with it, right? I don't think it's necessarily corruption, although, it's the Upton Sinclair thing. A man has a tremendous capacity not to see a thing when his living depends upon his not seeing it. Once you're making your living off these NGOs, it's a problem. It's a problem because they have to, they have to get money from these donors. Once you start getting that money coming in, you can't be legit anymore, because they're paying you. They're not paying you to be legit. They're paying you to give liberals the sense that they're on the right side of things.
Exactly. Speaking of religion. Video's a little shaky to headbang this time because you buffer a little bit, but that was well done nonetheless. All right, let's take some super chats and then we'll get into our next segment here. Pat Donahue, hit that like button, folks. Yes, thank you for the donation, my friend, and please do hit that like button, everybody, wherever you are. Big crowd filing in here now already. Nice crowd over on Rumble too. Got some folks watching on Rockfin, so thank you all for being here tonight. Martin R., thank you for the $49.99. Very generous of you. We owe you another singing bowl, my friend. Awesome picks. Compile a list of places to eat, please. Planning a travel next year. All right. So, yeah, you owe Martin a list of food recommendations.
I was saying this to Keaton today, actually, funny enough.
I know you're not really doing the restaurant thing, but, he's very generous with his donation, so no excuses. Just, find some restaurants anyway.
But just to say, some people are saying like, "Oh, enjoy your vacation," and I'm always like a little taken aback. Like this, I mean, of course, this is wonderful, and I'm so glad to be here. But to me, this is like research. Like the way I've spent my days, museum, church, ruin, like boom, 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 restaurants. I don't care about that. I've just eaten what's there, it's not part of the agenda. I'm trying to. It's like this keeps coming up on these shows lately. I'm due for an acid trip or something. When I used to go on psychonaut journeys, friends of mine who just wanted to like have a good time and watch the walls melt. I never understood that. Like, to me, you had this tremendous opportunity of 8 hours of expanded consciousness. All I wanted to do was think and debate philosophy, which made me a lot of fun at parties. It's like that. Like, you could have come to Rome and Greece and you just want to sit on a beach. What are you kidding? Fucking, you got
there are a lot of beaches
things
without that history that you can go to if that's your thing. Right, exactly.
Right. Like, why would you come here to do that? So, so the restaurants have not really been what I'm doing. I'll try, but I think you could probably find much better places than the joints I've just been landing in at the end of the day.
I'll tell you what, Martin, I'll do some research and I'll send you a list.
I mean, but he wants to know where I ate personally. I could tell you about ruins. I could tell you about the best ruins.
There you go. Eric Hussel, thanks for the $5. We only get circus from these bread Nazis. No food or shelter for you. No soup either. I like that. Nice little Seinfeld reference there. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate that. Bulla for the $2. Extra Bulla. A round of applause for Extra Bulla, who was our co-host 1 week ago on the 17th. Straight bookshelves in the mirror. Really? Really. Yes, straight bookshelves in the mirror. Russell doing the straight bookshelf in the reflection of the mirror behind him. Good eye, Bulla. John C., thank you for the $19.99 sticker, my friend. That's very kind, very generous, very helpful. Flavio Monterola, I love this guy's name. Franco Espeleta is back, and he's throwing beans at all indie content creators, including you guys. Watch his interview with Extra Bulla. He throws beans. I saw it. It was fine. He's fine. I mean, whatever. No hard feelings to Franco, and of course, no hard feelings to Bulla. I did see it, although one of the things he says, look, this is a common perception about us, is that we only cover the gossip. A lot of people think that about us because they only see the gossip, because the gossip is what gets fed to you in the algorithm, right? Like our videos on the beefs and the feuds and stuff. And like I said, we don't cover the beefs and the feuds just to cover beefs and feuds. We do it when it raises a larger issue. That's why we think those videos are good, and we are proud of them nonetheless. But those clips get a lot more views than, say, the stuff I put out with Danny Haifong this week, which is all about Ukraine and all. Those don't get as many views because they're not promoted as heavily. So that's all right. No hard feelings to Franco or Bulla, of course. Let's see, where are we at here? We got some stuff over on Rockfin. JVB $2 or 2 Ray or 2 robot coins, whatever they pay us in at Rockfin. And there are garbage bags by the litter. And then there are garbage bags by the liter. I have a warehouse full of bags. That don't fit.
This is what I want talking about. All these guys talk about are milliliter size garbage bags.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's their whole show.
Joe Mama, thanks for the Rumble rant. Hey, y'all, I'm Tyler D., newish supporter. Yes, Tyler, thank you. I'll call in later if I can get my mic working and y'all got time. Yeah, so folks, thank you for the donation, by the way, and thank you for being a supporter. We take calls towards the end of the streams, and we will always take calls. Sometimes we have more time for them than others. So just kind of just like you're calling into a radio show, have a point you want to make and make the point. You know what I mean? Like when you're on, you're on. That type of thing. But yeah, we'll always make time for our callers. That's the point of offering that feature. Frank Warsham, thanks for the $4.99. Well, Morning Joe, cover the Washington Post poll tomorrow. Trump up 9. Yeah, that would be interesting. We are going to touch upon that in one of our later segments. In fact, in the Morning Joe. segment. So thank you very much. We'll do one more, and then we'll go to our next segment. Mario Lorenzo, thanks for the $5. If you believe the American Climate Corps will be effective, I've got some clean coal to sell you. Exactly. Thank you very much. All right, let's go to another segment here. A little headline. So there's been a lot of talk about Bidenomics, folks. Joe Biden trying to tout his economic accomplishments, his economic record, and we've been saying forever on this show, and most people in the chat have been saying, most people in most chats, most commentators in this space have just been wondering what the hell you're talking about, because the lived reality of people in this country is quite dismal, to put it mildly. And here the Washington Post reports, along with several other outlets, this was a couple weeks ago now, U.S. poverty spiked in 2022, reversing gains, Census Bureau data shows. U.S. poverty spiked last year, with child poverty more than doubling, the U.S. Census Bureau reported Tuesday, while the proportion of people lacking health insurance in 2022 dropped to an uncommonly low level. The figures reflect the uneven pace at which the government has ceased some forms of coronavirus pandemic assistance, as well as the calamitous effects of record inflation on household finances. Tuesday's data offers the first statistical snapshot of how the winding down of such programs, as well as rising prices, have begun reshaping the country. The poverty rate, taking into account government aid programs to the poor, was 12.4% in 2022, up from 7.8% the previous year, the census data shows. That spike follows 2 years of declines and coincided with the end of increased child tax credit payments and other government interventions. Tuesday's census data also noted a 2.3% drop in median household income from $76,330 in 2021 to $74,580 in 2022. Real median earnings for both part-time and full-time workers also dropped last year by 2.2%, although incomes grew slightly for the lowest paid workers. The data also showed that 65.6% of working women worked full-time jobs year-round in 2022, the largest share on record. Russell cut out for a second there. The data also showed that 65.6% of working women worked full-time jobs, the largest share on record. Before Tuesday's data release, experts had been expecting a jump in the national poverty rate. The main question was the size of that increase because of the competing effects of an improving labor market and record inflation. The numbers reflected the impact of those higher costs. So you see there, it says 65.6% of working women worked full-time. We hear all about the unemployment rate being low. And what have I said for as long as we've had a show? For those of you who have been watching or listening for a while, going way back to the audio days, I've always said this since I was a kid. I said this. The employment rate or the unemployment rate is a red herring. Employment numbers do not matter if the jobs do not pay enough to live. What matters is inflation, what matters are wages, and what matters ultimately is the poverty rates. And so now you're seeing data reflect that this economy has gotten worse since Biden took over, since the lockdowns ended, not better, which is a pretty astounding thing. But not surprising, given the fact that we all go to the supermarket a few times a week. We all know what things cost. We all know what we're making at our jobs. All of this data was hidden in plain sight. It's just the elites don't see it because they don't bother looking. And a couple weeks ago, it was expected that this report would drop. And you saw a couple of outlets say Biden administration prepares for bad news on poverty rate. Well, turns out they didn't really have to answer for it because the media never makes them answer for it, right? If you watch MSNBC, if you read the New York Times or CNN, they make hardly any mention of this. Hardly any. This came and went in the Washington Post 2 weeks ago. How many segments have you seen on TV about this? On any of the major networks? Has Biden been forced to answer for this? Not that I've seen. These are the kinds of issues that just don't get the kind of coverage that they should, because these media outlets are not patronized by poor people. That's why.
Right.
That's why. And so on top of this, we're going to mention this poll later on in the show, but there was a new Washington Post poll that came out this morning that showed Trump up by 9 points, as one of our super chatters just mentioned, 51-42. In that same poll, the question was asked, what is your personal financial situation compared to the start of Biden's term? Are you better off, about the same, or worse off than you were at the start of his term? And look at those numbers. 44%, not as well off. 39% about the same. Only 15% of respondents said they were better off than the beginning of Joe Biden's term, which, keep in mind, the beginning of Joe Biden's term is when everyone was locked in their houses and the economic future of the world was extremely uncertain. And only 15% of people in this poll said they're better off than they were then, at such a hopeless time. 83% of respondents say they are about the same or worse off than they were in the heart of the pandemic lockdowns. That's amazing. That is amazing. And that, in any year resembling a normal election year, spells certain doom for the incumbent. And I would say it spells certain doom now, because unlike 2022, when Biden could basically lean on the Roe ruling to garner support for his party in the midterms, this is a different election where you don't just have the legislative branch up for grabs. You have the executive, which is why Russell's theory could be right, which is it'll be a split call where, because of the abortion issue and the uncertainty around that, Democrats may win certain House and Senate races that they wouldn't have won had it not been for Dobbs. But that executive race could go the other way. So you could have a split ruling, because it just seems impossible that he is in any shape to win given these numbers. 83% same or worse off than they were at the end of the world, basically, when everybody thought the world was going to end. So anyway, I'm sorry, that was long, but go ahead.
No, not at all. I think we need to talk about garbage bags a little bit.
Yeah, we got to bring back garbage bags. This is getting to be a downer. Talking about the environment, poverty. Yeah.
One interesting thing in that poll was that when Donald Trump left office, it was something like, somewhere around 32% had a positive view of his presidency, and now it's 48% have a positive view of his presidency, because they got to look at what happened afterwards.
Exactly. Yeah.
By Trump was a tough act to underperform, but Biden seems to have managed it. You got this shaky, cognitively impaired old man with a reptile vice president who creeps everybody out every time she speaks. That doesn't fill the country with confidence. A fucking South American style strongman looks pretty good now after getting a good look at the alternative. Did they do anything about, look, this inflation was largely caused by price gouging. That's what happens when you basically have 6 corporations manufacturing everything you buy in the fucking supermarket. If you really boil down all these products, they all come from like 6 corporations, like Nestle, Unilever, Johnson & Johnson. It's like 6 corporations that just raped everybody, took advantage of the pandemic. Remember, they talked about, they're going to investigate. What happened? They didn't investigate, because the Republicans are not going to investigate big corporations, and neither are the Democrats. So they got to inflate those prices for no reason. And they were going to put them back down. now that they're getting away with it. It's just another step in the extraction of the wealth of the working poor and the middle class. There are a lot of things that cost double what they did before the pandemic, literally double. And they never went back to what they were. So, of course, I mean, especially you're raising a family, how much money that's costing you per year. And people
we were
didn't get
thinking
any
of taking a like
equivalent.
brief Columbus Day little mini vacation, just going away for the weekend. There's a beautiful town called Stowe, Vermont that we used to work at we used to work a craft show there every Columbus Day weekend. It was a peak foliage season. It was an awesome town. We loved it there. And when we worked it, we would get a hotel on Columbus Day weekend, which is prime weekend, for $100 a night. And we would work the show. Mm-hmm. So we figure, all right, let's see if we can get a room up there, this time. Because we're not 5 hours away now. We're further north, so we're only like 2 hours away. That'd be a nice trip. Hotels are like fucking $300 a night. They triple.
Wow.
Triple. Like, you go to book a hotel, we're like, I guess we're not going anywhere because, goddamn. I mean, it's just incredible. Just from 3 years ago. So, yeah, no, I mean, the prices are just out of control across the board. Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah. And, obviously that's going to undermine people's finances. And, I guess at this point I'm allowed to say this without getting us kicked off YouTube. Okay, so now that all of the evidence is in, basically, more or less, and we also have some very interesting new evidence that's come out of, Sweden, that decided to go more with a let's just lock down the vulnerable.
Sweden, a less draconian approach, yeah, we'll say.
And, at first our media reported gleefully, no, see, they had a higher death rate, but then they dug into the numbers and it turned out that actually was not true. They did not have a higher death rate. They had a lower death rate than a lot of countries that went to more of an extreme, and they certainly didn't have a worse one than countries that had these draconian lockdowns. When you combine that with what they're finally really starting to report on literally this week, that what this has done to children, where the only reason the press is reporting on this is because all these teachers are going on TikTok and talking about it, how they have 8th graders performing at a 4th grade level. You have 40% of the districts in Baltimore do not have a single child that's performing math at grade level. Not a single one, 40% of the districts. Now, of course, Baltimore had problems before the pandemic, but part of that is learning loss in the pandemic. And that was particularly insane, given that children were not really at risk. I mean, this is something I've thought a lot about while I've been here, because now this is the second trip I've taken this year. And in both India and Greece, what I've encountered is situations that you don't encounter in America. In other words, situations where experience, your right to have an experience, is put before necessarily guarding your safety, right? So any schmuck can go backpack up around these winding mountain trails in Greece with, slippery rocks and sand and, man, there's no guardrails. There's nobody telling you can or you can't. We have, particularly in the United States, this insane culture of safetyism, and it's a liberal thing. I mean, this is an under-discussed aspect of the culture wars, I think, and a lot of that came out in the debates over COVID. There was, because the media would not allow this conversation to be had. You could get kicked off social media and banished from society if you talked about this in the heart of the pandemic. There was a legitimate debate to be had about safety at what cost, right? Once you add up the deaths of despair, once you add up the costs to society, is it really worth that? And as we know now, it didn't really make people safer, not in the end, not based on the numbers we have. didn't really save
Well,
lives.
once you aggregate everything, yeah. And when you look at, a poverty study like this, there's a lot of residual effects. There's several. Malnutrition is one. Now, that's more medical, so we'll save that for tomorrow, which is, by the way, our patron show is tomorrow. We're doing a patron show at 8 o'clock tomorrow night, and that is on Rumble. So if you are not signed up at patreon.com, in fact, I was going to do the patron plug.
Hang on, we're doing it at 8?
Yeah, 8 o'clock, right? Did you want to do it?
Your time, 8?
Yeah.
We'll talk later.
Yeah, all right, we'll talk. Patron show will be tomorrow, though. So let's, here, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to plug the Patreon show right now because we just brought it up. We were going to do this in a little while, but we'll do it right now. Patreon supporters get call-in access to this program, as well as access to 2 patron-exclusive streams per month. The next one will be tomorrow. I could probably do the afternoon. I just have to arrange for childcare. So stand by. There may have been a miscommunication between Russell and I as to when exactly that'll happen. But we will email you guys first thing.
Earlier your time.
Well, on the weekend I can do earlier, but not usually on the weekdays. But I could figure it out because I could always drop the kids off at the in-laws who they've been having a great time spending some time with. So yeah, we will work that out. So stay tuned, folks. We'll give you guys an email tomorrow morning about that. But the patron show will be tomorrow, and we have this great new patron supporter scroll right here that our friend and producer Jake made for us. So you get your name up in lights, call-in access to these streams, as well as 2 patron-exclusive streams every month. Those are uncensored streams that are over on Rumble. And so we thank you guys all very much for your support there. The more members we get signed up at Patreon, the more streams we can do. We are looking to add a 4th weekly stream, which we will do once we get 500 of you fine people signed up as monthly supporters, either on Patreon or on Substack. So patreon.com/DoDissidents or DoDissidents.substack.com. If you go to DoDissidents.substack.com, you can sign up for $5 a month. You get the same basic perks here. Also, those of you guys who have been asking us about merch, our merch shop is online right now. I will going to be sending out a link to that and hopefully have that link to YouTube by Wednesday's show. So we are very, very, very close on the merch. So thank you guys for your curiosity and support in terms of when our new merch is coming out. Elizabeth Marshall, thank you for the $5. Airlines run empty flights to keep their places and schedules at airports. So glad I rinsed out my dog food can. That's, wow, interesting. Thank you, Elizabeth. Eric Rousseau, religion conditions people to believe claims without evidence, which bleeds into every aspect of human life. Indeed. Long story short, thanks for the $2. Russ, you mean red, not white pill on Boeing. Is that right? I didn't catch that one either.
Did I say anything about
a red pill or a
Did
white
I say
pill?
white pill? Oh, I might have said that was, yeah, I said something like that was a red pill moment. Did I say white pill? Really?
Maybe. I'm not sure. I don't remember.
mean, it is late. I don't remember saying that, but I'll take your word for it. Yes, I did mean red pill. If I said white pill, that is not what I meant.
All right. Meteor Dreams, thanks for the $1.99. Appreciate that. In 1999, when I was 8 years old, the world was better. Well, yeah, it was the end of history period, my friend. The end of history.
That was the last good year in America.
Right, exactly. Exactly. Dave Dillery, thank you for the $50. We owe you a singing bowl ring, my friend. Look forward to seeing what you clank together for this. LOL. You got something to clank together? Last time you had a hair comb and a coffee thermos, it looked like.
No, that's
beautiful. Just don't slam the router.
Give me 1 second, and actually, there's something over there that'll probably work. Hang on.
All righty. I also just tried to criticize YouTube and it did not work. Did you see Blumenthal tweet about demonetization for playing Russell Brand's video on the allegations? Yes, I did see that tweet. And funny enough, when we covered the Brand allegations last week, our stream got partially demonetized for that. They put limited ads on it. Oh, there you go. Beautiful. A wine glass. Careful with that. You don't want to break that. Broken glass is no fun.
Before it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we got our stream partially demonetized for that as well. Not fully, but partially. It ran with limited ads, as I suspected it would. Which is why, if you notice, we did not do a clip of the Russell Brand segment, because I knew it would get demonetized. And the way the algorithm works, without getting into specifics because it's kind of boring, but the more demonetized videos you put out, the harder it is to monetize future videos. Just because of the way the screening process and everything works. What's that?
They get suspicious of you.
Right. They start checking. Like, they have this thing where they make you rate your videos for ad suitability. And so right now we have a good accuracy rating, and so it's very easy to monetize our clipped content. For a long time, we did not have a good accuracy rating because we would say it's good and then they would say, no, it's not. And so it took a long time to get them to trust our ratings. And so once they do that, if you put out stuff that then gets limited monetization, it becomes harder to monetize future content. So that's why I didn't clip that video, but I suspected they would. Put limited ads on that one. So it was not a surprise to see Max Blumenthal's tweet. Not at all. Abiding, thanks for the 99 cents. Appreciate it. Courtney, Russell spends vacay like I do without the food breaks. LOL. Museums, ruins, historical sites, etc. LOL. Thanks for all of the great photos. Well, thank you, Courtney. We appreciate that. All righty. We will get to some more super chats in a few moments. Let me just adjust my notes there. I got that out of the way. Okay, this is a fun one, folks. Here's a fun one. 400-pound NYPD robot gets tryout in Times Square subway station. The K5, described as a fully autonomous security robot, is part of a push by the mayor for more law enforcement technology, which has raised concerns among privacy advocates. What weighs almost 400 pounds, asked the New York Times, stands roughly 5'3", and according to Mayor Eric Adams, will be a valuable tool in New York City. Well, that's 400 pounds and 5'3". Maybe it eats fudge rounds. Maybe this sounds like the Oliver Anthony lyric. It lives on fudge rounds. It's 5'3", it weighs 400 pounds, and it's funded by taxpayer dollars. How do you like that? So it's taxpayer funded, 5'3", 400 pounds. Looks like this is a welfare queen we got on our hands here, going to be patrolling the subway. Well, it'll be a valuable tool in New York City's law enforcement efforts. Exactly. To Mark Radlin, a restaurant manager, it looks like an oversized version of R2-D2, the droid from the Star Wars films. I don't know what it's supposed to be, he said as he took a picture of the object. Albert Fox-Kahn, the executive director of the Surveillance Technology Oversight Project, a privacy and civil rights group, had a more dismissive view. A trash can on wheels, he called it. Its official name is K5, and its California-based maker, Nightscope, describes it as a fully autonomous outdoor security robot. It is currently used in hospitals, malls, airports, warehouses, and casinos, and will soon be deployed in the Times Square subway station, the city's busiest underground transit hub. The robot, armed with 4 cameras, will record video but not audio. It will employ facial recognition, and at a moment when the mayor is calling for... it will not employ facial recognition. And at a moment when the mayor is calling for vital city agencies to slash 5% of their budgets, the cost of leasing it averages out to about $9 per hour. So here we're going to see some video of a press conference where the mayor and some NYPD brass sort of show off the robot and answer some questions. So here we go.
The K5 will operate between midnight and 6 a.m. at the Times Square subway station for 2 months. With the duration of the trial, it will be accompanied by a police officer at all times. And for the first 2 weeks, it will be trained to map out the station. It will move around the main station area and not on the platform. We want to be clear on that. It will record video that can be reviewed in case of an emergency or a crime. It will not record audio, and it will not use facial recognition. However, the K5 does have a button that connects you immediately to a live person that New Yorkers can utilize 24/7 with questions, concerns, or to report an incident if needed. And at the end of the 2 months, we will assess the robot's effectiveness and decide whether and how we will continue to use it moving forward. New Yorkers have strong opinion on technology. I like to say 8.3 million New Yorkers, 35 million opinions. So you're going to hear them all. But they are going to feel the presence of technology that will continue to keep them safe. It's cost effective. $9, I think, an hour. $9 an hour. That's below minimum wage. And we only pay for it when it's being operated.
How much does it actually cost to buy one of these things?
We're not buying, we're leasing. $9 an hour.
All right, so on the one hand, this seems like sort of an Orwellian escalation of the police state. On the other hand, it is kind of sweet to see cops losing their jobs to minimum wage AI. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I mean, that is a little bit satisfying, I have to say. But he goes on.
$9 an hour. I know you wanted to write how we're wasting money, but I'm sorry, I'm taking your thunder away. We're leasing at $9 an hour. This is a good investment in taxpayers' dollars. And I'm hoping you're going to put a line in your story how cost efficient I am, because I should get that. This is below minimum wage. You know, no bathroom breaks, no meal breaks. This is a good investment. So please make sure he adds that in his story, okay?
All right. Let's see, what do we got here?
New York mayors for decades. This is the beginning of the end of their hegemony.
Yeah, exactly.
Your move, creep.
Yeah. I just did your RoboCop sound drop. I know you probably couldn't hear it. But I hit that one for you.
Yeah,
so
like nobody's seen RoboCop. You know, like right now, this is innocent enough. Right, it's just gonna kind of have a call box button and whatever. I mean, as you were saying, it's probably it seems like more PR than purpose, really.
Well, yeah, of course, it seems like more PR than purpose, because they already have call boxes in the subway stations. They already have cameras in the subway stations.
Right. Just
and
add
so
more.
This seems to be designed for, right. Just add more cameras and more call boxes. Right. What do you need this for? I think this is designed to boost tourism, to make tourists feel safer, because they are employing this at the busiest transit hub, but it's also the most touristy of the transit hubs. It's certainly not one of the less safe transit hubs in the city. There are hundreds of subway stations far less safe than the Times Square subway station that they could put this on if they really thought that this was going to make people safer. I think this is a PR move. It's Times Square. It's for tourism revenue. And I think, ultimately they want people back on the subways. They just had a positive subway month last month. But as you mentioned, over the past several years, people have been taking the subway less and less, which is partly because of the sort of work from home trend that's sort of residual from the pandemic, but also the fact that crime has ticked up and people feel a little more uneasy about taking the subway in general. And so I think this is an effort to make people feel like they are safer because of this RoboCop patrolling the subway stations. And it's not even on the platforms either. It can't be on the platforms, because if they put it on the platforms, of course, it would really end up on the tracks, which is something that they talk about here, because there are some questions about vandalism. So let me just play this first.
But I'm just curious if there's any concern about vandalization and other things.
She just asked about vandalization.
Great question, and here's why we are fiscally smart. Someone damaged the robot, they would pay for it. You know, so yes,
Great
are
plan.
you going to get pranksters? Yes, but eventually this is going to
That'll
be part of
deter
the
them.
fabric of our subway system, and people are going to see it. They're going to see the benefits of it. They're going to communicate to ask questions. If need, they're going to hit the emergency button. So yes, but we are also going to have a way of making sure that we're monitoring and make sure people are not damaging the equipment. And let's be clear, this is not a pushover. 420 pounds.
Let me say this. If anyone destroys this or vandalizes this, they're going to be captured on video, and we're going to prosecute them. And they're going to be arrested. And
I gotta tell you, this is why I always love New York City, because the first place everyone's mind goes when they see this is this fucking thing's gonna get the shit beat out of it as soon as they drop it into the public. That's their first question. So what happens when people just go ham on this fucking thing, right? He's like, yeah, just so you know, you will be prosecuted. All right, and then we don't have to watch the whole rest of that. He goes on to mention, the camera feature and the call feature, which, Russell, as you were saying offline before we went on, they already have those features installed. So what exactly is this fucking thing here for?
Yeah, and I think you're right. It's PR. Although, they're probably thinking long term. Right now it's innocent enough. Pretty soon that thing's going to be strapped with a couple semi-automatics.
Right.
And be fucking people up, man. It's the frog in the pot of boiling water. You can't just introduce the OPM murderous robot all at once.
Right, exactly right.
You got to work up to that shit. So just make it a friendly camera toting robot for now.
Right. Then they'll come up with the excuse where actually we're going to turn on facial recognition. Right. They'll add a feature.
Yeah. It'll be a slippery slope, and before you know it, you'll be in that dystopian RoboCop nightmare of the non-cyborg, the one he had to fight at the end. That's what this is going to evolve into. It's going to be like the big egg-shaped thing with the legs that was with the two carbines. That's what this is going to wind up being in 10 years.
Yeah. No. Sorry, go ahead.
Although New York, right after the pandemic, the subway was definitely a little sketchy. It hasn't really felt that way for a while. I think a lot of places were a little weird right after the pandemic. What was that movie with Adam Driver that kind of captured that weird vibe afterwards on Netflix?
Oh yeah, White Noise.
White Noise, yeah. There was definitely a weird vibe, and you had that weird vibe, I think, everywhere. But in New York, it was like triple because it's New York. And you definitely had more crazy on the subway and that kind of thing. Now, really, I'll be interested to see if it's a noticeable shift when I go back, because, the migrant crisis is really spiraling into a crisis now.
Adams is very hawkish on that. Adams is a fascist. He is. And that's not to say that everybody who's concerned about that issue is a fascist, but look, he hugging the RoboCop. He is a cop, right? He is the biggest asshole in the city, famous around the world for its assholes. That's what I say. New York is famous for its assholes, and they found the biggest one in New York, and they put him in charge of it.
I will say, as a New Yorker, every now and then in these travels, I've had to check myself. Because as a New Yorker, you're just fucking naturally pushy. If you're put in situations where there's a crowded line of people all trying to get through, as a New Yorker, your tendency is going to be to fucking elbow people out of your way.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you really got to check that impulse and be just like if you learn to drive in New York and then you go live in another city, it takes you about a month to learn not to drive like an asshole, because you're used to having to assume that no one will let you in.
Right.
And then you figure out, oh no, they'll let you in other places. They act like fucking human beings. You don't have to be an animal on the road. And in fact, in New York, you can drive that way without really risking life and limb because everyone expects you to drive that way. If you drive that way other places, they don't expect to get cut off like that.
Right.
You're gonna fucking cause an accident. Like you really, it's just it's the same. Just moving in the world as a New Yorker. Like you gotta stop being a New Yorker. You gotta be like, oh, people are gonna be decent. You don't have to fight for every fucking inch, right? That's how New York trains you, right? Like you got to fight for every inch. And that is why New Yorkers usually do pretty well when they move other places, because they're so fucking on it. Right. You know, most people are just not like that because they did, you know, it's like when you leave New York, it's like you left a heavier gravity and you went to a lighter gravity, right? It's like, oh, really? Everything's this easy here?
Of course. Yeah.
But yeah, I could already see before I left, you know, like now you're seeing migrant families, you know, camped out on Fifth Avenue. And this is why I said, you know, it's funny, you know, you got all the liberals screaming about how horrible these, you know, DeSantis is and Abbott is. Why? What they're making you share in the burden that they have. Like, why? You've been saying all these years that they're racist for complaining about it. So why are you complaining about it? Shut up. Right? I mean, that's why I said from the beginning it was a genius troll. But at the same time, you want to talk about like trying to. The city feels a little like it's spiraling out of control. And it's partly because of that, because that's putting enormous pressure on the city's resources. So this could be tied to that as well.
I think it's much more macro factors. It's much more the segment that we did earlier. You know, people are poorer all across the board. I mean, I was just in the city recently, and yeah, I mean, you see a lot more homeless than I did back when I lived there, way more. Just in the limited time I was there. I was there basically for one night. I mean, you just see a huge difference. And I think that is because mostly of just macroeconomic trends.
Oh, yeah. But I'm saying, I think part of why he might be rolling out this robot is to obscure all that. Look, we have a robot. Doris, keep coming. Come to Broadway. We have a robot. Don't worry.
That's what it is. Yeah,
nothing's going to happen.
To put people's, it's to give people the illusion that he's on it and that you're safer with this fucking robot patrolling a subway station. Where, okay, so the way the Times Square subway hub is laid out, you have the platforms, which the trains come and they stop, and then they pick you up and then they take off. But then there are like two tiers of basically an indoor mall. I mean, the Times Square subway station is basically an underground mall. You got, I mean, back when I lived there, you had a video game store down there, right? You got a deli down there, right? I mean, it's not a place where people generally feel unsafe. You have there's always music down there, you know, there's always people out, you know, playing, you know, for tips and things like that. And there's always a ton of people there because it's Times Square. Generally, you tend to have problems in the more isolated subway stops. That's where things tend to happen when there's nobody around to catch you.
Put it in the South Bronx.
Right, you put it in the South Bronx. But again, you put something like that out in East New York in the South Bronx, it's ending up on the tracks. And then you got a big problem. Then you got a big expense of fixing the head car of the train, which you can't do for $9 an hour, you know. We'll see. I mean, this is on a trial period, and we'll see if it goes past there. Sorry, go ahead.
At 400 pounds, you'll have fucking 10 kids flying tackle that fucking thing. It'll go over.
Oh yeah, they can get it. Oh yeah, of course, of course. It would take a team effort, but it would happen. 100%. Absolutely no doubt about that. Jax Page, thanks for the $5. I agree with Russell about seeing the U.S. for what it is now that I'm living in Mexico. It gives you a completely different perspective. Well, thank you, Jax. Appreciate that. Martin R., list of ruins then. Okay, so no restaurants. Give him a list of ruins to go to. That you can do.
Okay, for the experience, Delos, hands down. Like you want to have an amazing experience, Delos. Pompeii, look, it's incredible to see. It's just remember, because it's Pompeii, you don't really ever really get a corner to yourself to just have that experience of like the eerie ruins of this civilization, right? Whereas on Delos, like I said, once I went to the part that's harder to access that the tourists don't go to, I didn't see another person for hours. That's an incredible thing to experience. So Delos 1, Pompeii 2, Akrotiri on Santorini. They're really at the beginning of the excavations on that. In another 10 years, it'll probably be really cool, but it's not much to see now. So that's my ruins ranking.
Beautiful. All right. Fair enough. Thank you, Martin.
The forum. I with Pompeii, like kind of on the same. Tied for number 2, the forum.
All right. Carrie Scott, thanks for the $2. Sampled Keaton and EB. Who's EB? On Fall in Love by Steve Wick. Oh, is that a song? Did you sample me in a song? All right. I'll have to look that up. Is that on YouTube? Can I look that up after the show? Fall in Love by Steve Wick, W-I-K. I will look that up. Thank you, Carrie. Appreciate that. That'll be fun to listen to. Thank you. Eric Rousseau, thank you for the $5. I learned metric conversion as a young lad scoring weed in the 70s and 80s. Something good always happens at 420 for me. Tommy Chong. Thank you, Eric Rousseau. Appreciate that. What do we got here? Jay, can you do me a favor and can you just delete the Rumble rants after I read them so that I can kind of keep track of where I'm at in the scroll? Thank you.
Can I just say something?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Excuse me.
All right. So Dr. Nick there, so he just wants to go where Pink Floyd recorded their video. I will throw in some pictures of that on Wednesday because I did go there. That's like an intact Roman amphitheater where they did that recording, where they did that album. It was pretty amazing.
It's a famous one, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's very cool. Like you could just walk through the gladiator door and you're out there on the arena floor. It's very cool.
Russ is at an Airbnb. Laugh for $2 on Rumble. Thank you. I need to know what books are on Russ's bookshelf in the mirror. This is an Airbnb, so it'll be hard to tell.
I mean, I saw them before. They're in Greek. It's all Greek to me.
It's all Greek. That's right. That's right. So he wouldn't know. But yeah, looks like a nice Airbnb.
Naomi Klein book up there, very incongruously.
What's that?
There's a Naomi Klein book up there, very incongruously.
She has a new book out that I can't figure out what it's about. It's called Doppelganger. I don't know what the hell it's about. Not particularly curious either. But Vermont Bread Smith put this in here. Keaton, come stay at our Airbnb in Essex, New York. That's interesting. Send me a link. Email me. dudedissidents@gmail.com. Essex, that's right on Lake Champlain, right? So depending on where it is on the lake, I don't know what kind of drive it is to Burlington. Because I remember I used to love Burlington, Vermont. I haven't been there in a while. But when we would work in Stowe, I would always tell my wife we should go to Burlington for a night. But we were always exhausted because we would work all day. So we never got a chance to visit since I've seen it. Probably haven't been to Burlington in 15 years, but it's a great town. So, and Essex is very pretty too because it's right on the water. So yes, definitely hit me up, send me a link, and look into it. Thank you.
Just remember, if you offered it on the arm, that would be classic.
Yeah, right. You know,
just gonna come personal appearance, find some fucking autographs for you, your little fucking brat.
Right.
Fucking
exactly.
offer that on the arm. That's the right thing to do.
Right. Jessica May, Neil deGrasse. If we can get geoengineer Moss Moon, we have the ability to geoengineer Earth. Have you seen Michael Moore's Planet of the Humans? I have. I love that movie. Even he calls on the green companies in the investigative report. No, I thought that was a very, very profound film. One of my favorite scenes in that is when the filmmaker goes to the university and he says to the philosophy teacher, he says, every civilization has an immortality myth, and it seems like the green movement is our immortality myth, right? It seems like we are kidding ourselves into thinking if we just make these few adjustments, our civilization can go on forever. And that's of course impossible. But yes, I did love that movie.
Yeah, I'm just quickly going to say, just because you're a great physicist doesn't mean your takes on everything are great. Neil deGrasse Tyson needs to shut the fuck up now because he says a lot of stupid shit, and it's given a lot more weight than it should because he's a physicist, which, you know, he's commenting on things that aren't even related to his field and just, you know, becoming this central voice in debates that he just shouldn't even be in. That's a good example.
Yeah, I haven't heard him weigh in on much. I don't tend to seek his opinions out on anything outside of his area of expertise. But yeah, you're right. I mean, he does kind of, you know, inject himself in a lot of conversations where he probably shouldn't.
Well, look, man. Once they lay the sexual harassment thing on you, then you got to go full woke. I mean, it's the only way to protect yourself. You know,
that's right. They did nail that. Did they say that about him at one time?
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
that's right. I forgot.
And then after that, if you want them to leave you alone, you got to go full woke. So that's kind of what he's done on cultural issues. You know, that's a story that's being covered a lot by conservative media this week. Maybe we'll get into it on Wednesday. You know, Howard Stern, you know, it just gave a rant about, well, if being anti-Donald Trump and being pro-vaccine means you're woke, then I'm fucking woke. I'm full woke. I'm proud to be woke. So they dug up him talking about how hot the Olsen twins while they were still children.
Yeah, no,
and
he used to do all that kind of, all that stuff.
They dug up a clip of him saying, in the wake of Columbine, it was like 2 days after.
No,
Columbine.
I know. Yeah, don't even repeat. I don't even know if we should repeat that on the air. But yeah, just horrible stuff.
Well,
yeah.
So you know, I mean, the point a lot of the conservative commentators are making, and I think they're right, is you know, that's why he's touting his wokeness, right? Because he's trying to protect himself from them going into his old shows and canceling him. You know,
I mean, I think Howard Stern is uncancelable. I think I do think he's always had certain neuroses. And I think now in his old age, he's just lost a lot of that edge. So all that's left to project are the neuroses of an old skinny Jewish guy, basically. You know, like what? I mean, I can't imagine. You know, he has. You know, people keep that same edge their whole lives. Some of them did. I mean, George Carlin never softens. He never got milder. But I think to a certain extent, Howard just kind of got old. And, you know, now he's like, you know, my Jewish, you know, great uncle was, you know, in his later years.
Well, you know, it's funny, man. I was in an after hours club way back, man, way back. This is like the 90s. And fucking David Lee Roth walks in. And he looked like your fucking Jewish uncle, man. He looked like a little fucking old Jewish man. You know, he's got the nose. You can't tell with the way they do the makeup. He's got the beak. He's got the whole thing, man. But I lost my train of thought. Let's just move on.
Okay. No guardrails in Greece confirms, as DT Kennedy over on Rumble. Thank you for the Rumble rants, folks. It's very kind of you guys. Appreciate that. Bonzo Beans giving us a peace sign, and he also says, no hard feelings if you take your election coverage fund and head off to Rome or Athens again. Well, we were not going to be doing that, my friend. We will be making good on that. That's the thing. As soon as Russ gets back, we're going to start booking our trips, actually, to Iowa and New Hampshire.
No, you know what I'll say about the guardrails and all that shit. All right, so if you live, I wouldn't call this an American thing, but it is kind of a liberal versus conservative thing, and it's partly built around the parts of the country they live in. If you live in fucking New York, or any of these like very liberal cities, that culture of safetyism is very present. You know, everything is child-proofed. They want to fucking bubble wrap everything. So when I went to India, after living like that for so long, there were a lot of things that scared me, man. Like, you know, I climbed up to a temple and the guide took us out on a mountain. I was scared shitless, man. Because you're not put in situations like that where you're climbing out on fucking rocks with a sheer drop on the side. You're just not faced with that possibility when your life is get on the subway, go to work, get on the subway, go home. You're just not put in these very real kinds of situations. And, you know, I actually, at one point, I choked. I was like, yeah, I'm not going any further out there. Fuck that shit. And it really bothered me, man. And I said after, I felt so bad about it. I was like, yeah, you know, man, you're not used to being put in those situations. Next time you're in a situation like that, you'll be more prepared. So actually, when I was on Delos, when I climbed up that mountain, I had a moment where I was like, I was scared to go any further because it was fucking windy up there. I'm by myself. But I went. So basically, point being, modern life makes us very incompetent to deal with real world situations. And I think a lot of us, particularly if you're living in cities, if you're kind of living around kind of liberal culture, it makes you neurotic, it makes you incapable, it makes you incompetent, and it makes you unable to push yourself into situations where, you know, it might be a little dangerous, but the juice is worth the squeeze, man. Like it's worth it. But you're constantly having drummed into your head from the media like everything's gonna fucking kill you. And it fucks you up. It fucks you up. It denies you a lot of meaningful life experience. And I say this is partly a liberal conservative thing because, you know, man, you got those Duck Dynasty motherfuckers down there. They ain't got no guardrails, you know? Like, this is basically.
Well, a lot of it is geography, too. I mean, a lot of that is terrain. You know, like I always thought to myself, you know, what's with all these like conservative types in their cars? Why are they all fucking obsessed with their cars? You know, it seemed like most of these Republican rural guys, they all are fucking obsessed with souping up their cars. And then when I drove across country, I realized, well, you go out to West Texas, the exits are 60 miles apart. You better have a car in running order. You know what I mean? If you want to make it from point A to point B and you don't want to get stuck in the middle of nowhere for 5 days while the garage in some, you know, traffic light town waits for the part to fix your truck, like that's why, you know what I mean? So a lot of it is geography too. I mean, that really determines, you know, a lot of it.
I mean, we have, look, first of all, where I come from in Queens, people love their muscle cars, man. So you had those fucking Italian dudes working on their fucking cars. They love that shit. So that's not something you can't find here. And yeah, man, you can have these kinds of experiences. You can go to the Catskills or the Adirondacks. You can go to hiking trails. You got Harriman State Park as part of the Appalachian Trail.
No, I used to live right near Harriman State Park.
Yeah, part of the Appalachian Trail runs through there. So you can do those things. I guess, you know, and this is what I was saying before, an unexplored part of what blew up during COVID, during the pandemic, a big part of that was it brought the conservative culture of cowboy up right up against the liberal culture of safetyism. That's what a lot of that shit was about. You know,
yeah, I can see that. Yeah, that makes sense. Courtney, you know, thanks for the $5. You guys get on average 5 to 8 more times in super chats than I do in the same time doing Uber Eats. I want to get that rideshare panel going. I think that would be a great thing to do on this channel. But But yeah, look, I mean, for sure, it's super helpful. But you also got to understand, we got to share. I got to share the money with Russell. We got to share it with YouTube, and then we got to put a few hours in a prep. So that's what I mean by it's time. It's it's hours I spend here or hours I can't spend there. So it all at this point kind of evens out where I can drive less because I'm doing the show more. Thankfully, it took a while to get it to that point. But in order for us to add a fourth stream and really do this full time, this stuff is all super helpful. So thank you guys all very much. Tusker, I don't endorse anyone engaging in criminal activity. Neither do we here at the Forced Compliance Podcast. Thank you, Tusker. But I would encourage anyone that is considering it to commit those crimes close to the staircases. Yeah, well, no, I have to push back on you, Tusker, because if you're going to do it, you got to be careful on the staircases because it can roll down the staircase and hit somebody coming up the staircase. So you got to make sure that, no one is around. Don't just go blindly down a staircase with one of those things. So just want to make sure. Just got to give you a little pushback there because these New York City staircases, they're long. It can build up a lot of speed. Right, and somebody comes around the corner to come up a stair, and then there's a 400-pound fudge round, fattened up, RoboCop, just tumbling down the stairs. That could be dangerous, and we don't condone that here, of course. Zach, thanks for the $1.99. I don't know what topic is, but if bad, it's only just begun. Robots, yes, that's the topic, Zach. You figured it out. For fuck's sake. Thank you, Zach. Appreciate that. All right, folks, let's keep plugging away here. Okay, this is the fun one. So, there was a poll that came out in the Washington Post today that obviously had Joe Biden down by 9 points, 51-42. In fact, a lot of television outlets reported it as down by 10 points, 52-42. I guess it was 9 and change. So depending on the rounding preferences of different outlets, it was reported slightly differently. But this was Morning Joe this morning before that poll came out. Or I believe it was yesterday morning, actually. But given Joe Biden's polling slip recently, because Real Clear Politics average now has Trump leading in the average of polls, with several of the more recent polls being just about tied nationwide, which gives Trump a major edge in the Electoral College, obviously. There is talk.
I think it's important to point out, it's not that Trump is popular. He's only slightly less unpopular than Joe Biden is. It's just given the choice between those two particular flavors of shit, more people choose Trump.
Right. Exactly. So given Joe Biden's recent polling slip against Donald Trump, conversations are stirring about why that is. And behind closed doors, trust me, we'll show some evidence of this later. Democrats are talking about the possibility of switching him off the ticket. Of course, a big problem that Biden has, whether he remains in the race or not, is his vice president, Kamala Harris. And so on Morning Joe, they made what I can only describe as a laughably desperate attempt to convince their audience that Kamala Harris is actually a great asset, not only to Biden's White House, but to his reelection campaign. And now that I just think of that last sentence, maybe desperate is not the right word because their audience is dumb enough to actually swallow this, and I'm sure they did. But when you talk about in-the-bubble liberal media coverage, this is some of the worst since the run-up to the 2016 election where, Trump will never be president. I mean, this is really Hall of Fame stuff. So let's watch this.
I have people telling me, Eddie Glom Jr. They're like, so he's he's old and I know. I don't know, because I want to make him say Kamala Harris's name. If he's old and they're going to be looking at, I go, no, I don't know. Tell me. But it's always like, Kamala. What about Kamala?
What about her?
Well, there's sort of this undercurrent, like she's black and she's a woman, and that's why people don't like her because she's a vice president. And what are we going to do?
Okay, we got to stop right there. I mean, just look at these idiots. Look at what a bunch of irrelevant losers they got on here. And actually, Eddie Glaude is by far the most substantive of the lot here, which is why it's a little surprising to see him swallow this line of bullshit, hook, line, and sinker. I guess he knows where his bread is buttered. That's Donnie Deutsch on the right there, who said famously that he would vote for Donald Trump if Bernie Sanders were the nominee, and then Joe Scarborough shut him up and said, no, you wouldn't. Come on, you can't say that. Joe Scarborough is a Republican himself. He was elected to Congress in 1994, so he's not a woke lib, so he knows better than to say what he just said. Oh yeah, it's that she's black and she's a woman. That's why Michelle Obama has an approval rating about 15 points higher than Joe Biden, right? So if Kamala is perceived as a drag on the ticket and people are concerned about her because she's a black woman, how do you explain the fact that Michelle Obama polls significantly ahead of Republican opponents, whereas Joe Biden and Kamala Harris both tank? I mean, he knows this. Joe Scarborough knows this. He's a Republican. This isn't the water in which he's swam his whole life. He's throwing red meat to the brain dead audience there, and these guys just swallow it. It's just incredible. Anything to add about that before we go on?
I thought this was an episode of Next Generation when you first went to that show.
Right. Exactly.
Lieutenant LaForge.
Yeah.
So you can't even, when you watch Morning Joe at this point, you can't even say they're just this stupid. This is their job, man. I mean, to spread elite Washington insider propaganda, to spin things according to that disposition. That's why it doesn't matter that Scarborough is a Republican. That doesn't matter. This is about it, because Trump is so unacceptable to this class that as we saw in the last two election cycles, they'll all become Democrats if the option is Donald Trump. They'll all run cover for whatever Democratic administration happens to be there. Do they believe this stuff? I don't think so. I mean, not what they're talking about right now. Like they just, just
I don't
say
believe
some
Scarborough
stuff.
believes it. Not at all.
She's
a
black.
conservative.
She's
He's
a
a
what?
Republican. He knows that's bullshit.
Yeah,
He
come
knows
on,
that's
man.
bullshit. Yeah. He knows that's
Listen, I always say reptile with her because I think of something that Michael Crichton said that was very interesting in the Jurassic Park book. He said, mammals have an instinctively bad reaction to reptiles because the way they move is wrong. They just don't move like mammals, right? It creeps us out, right? That's what Kamala Harris is. Like, the whole way that she moves seems so inhuman. I mean, metaphorically moves, just like the way she handles herself, that she doesn't seem like a mammal. She seems like
because
a reptile.
every move is premeditated, every move is manufactured, every move is choreographed. So when everything is choreographed and manufactured for the camera, you don't have that organic just state of being about you that a lot of the more skilled politicians can at least mimic if and when they have to.
I think it's beyond that. As my longtime theory has been that she's a psychopath, and that's why her behavior is off. That's why she doesn't understand when to laugh, because psychopaths, they don't quite understand how people behave, but they learn to imitate it. But they make mistakes.
Well, that's what I mean. They learn to, but that
it doesn't come
that's
naturally.
Exactly what I said. I said it's all contrived. Every move is premeditated because you're doing this like Dexter-like performance of what you think a normal person would act.
See, but like Hillary, I don't think she's a psychopath in that way. Like, it was torturous to watch her, but you felt like it was torturous because this was a human being trying to fit herself into a rehearsed box. With Kamala, it's like her instincts are all wrong. They're all wrong because she doesn't get human behavior. With Hillary, you felt more like She was trying to figure out how to be something she really wasn't. She was never a politician. If she hadn't married Bill Clinton, there's no fucking way she would have had a career in politics. She wasn't good at it.
She wasn't even a good. She failed the DC bar exam. But anyway, that's a different topic. All right, let's get back. She did. Yep.
I didn't know that.
Change her.
She did indeed. Sorry.
We need to change her. We need to. And I just go, where were you when Dan Quayle was vice president? Where were you? Nobody remembers this. George H.W. Bush, buried, sainted, like one of the greatest foreign policy presidents of the second half of the 20th century. That guy in the 80s was destroyed by the press. Destroyed by the press. What about Al Gore? Every vice president.
Okay, stop. Dan Quayle was a joke. Yes, everybody said Dan Quayle was a joke. But when Dan Quayle was vice president, George H.W. Bush was in his mid-60s. Dan Quayle did not serve under a senile octogenarian. If he did, people would be much more alarmed about Dan Quayle. Al Gore was a punchline because he was boring and a stiff, and he was sort of the straight man to Bill Clinton's, first black president, quote unquote, saxophone shtick. And George H.W. Bush, to the extent that he was considered a clown or laughed at, but not really, not nearly to the extent that Harris is. And so he's just comparing apples and oranges. The most obvious point is that all of those vice presidents served not with the expectation that they would have to fill in. And the people did ultimately trust George H.W. Bush to fill in for Ronald Reagan because they voted him president in 1988. And so the other two examples, Dan Quayle and Al Gore, Quayle was a joke, never became president. Al Gore was a punchline more than a joke. He was a punchline because he was a square, but he never became president either. That's the whole point. The whole point, what are you talking about? You're comparing her to these vice presidents who never got the keys because people didn't trust them with the keys. And Dan Quayle, come on, you can't compare George H.W. Bush at, what was he, 64? He was born in 1924, so 64 when he was voted in. And then he only served one term. So he was in his mid-60s. It's a totally different ballgame.
Well, that's what's kind of disgraceful about these shows. You talk to people who consume a lot of these media, a lot of this kind of media, and they pick up this kind of pattern, right? Like they're Washington insiders too, and that's the intention of the show, right? To make striving bourgeois losers. So they check in on these shows to hear what the elite opinions are, and then they go repeat them to other striving libs. The substance of it, I don't know that they really care, right? I mean, I can't imagine Joe Scarborough believes what he's saying right now. Like, he's not this fundamentally stupid. Some of them are. He's not. To be making that comparison, he has to know what's wrong with this comparison. But he knows the audience will like it.
Right. He knows that they don't know, and he knows that they'll eat it up. Exactly.
Right. It's a political entertainment show, right? Exactly. As you say, Dan Quayle, if George Bush had been an 80-something senile man, Quayle would have been a real issue. In fact, given that institutions were a little more robust back then, if that had been the case, first of all, a guy like that wouldn't have been president. But assuming that somebody like that was, they would have removed Quayle. They would have taken him out of office. Like they would have gotten him to step down. Well, they just would not have allowed it. And with Gore, nobody ever questioned that he was a good vice president to Bill Clinton. They joked around with him. It's called political humor. Like it was never like, oh God, I can't believe that guy's vice president. Not at all. Like that's an even worse comparison because Gore was never thought as like a joke like that, in that way, like he shouldn't be vice president or he's incompetent. Nobody ever thought that about Al Gore.
No, they just thought that he was dull. But the HW comparison is interesting because Ronald Reagan did start to lose his mind in office, and people did trust George H.W. Bush enough to elect him president. Now, that's something they try to make the argument for in Kamala's case towards the end of this segment. And by the way, just so everybody knows, we did edit this segment for time. The raw video is about 5.5 minutes, so I did skip ahead of parts.
What about Al Gore? Every vice president. We hear this all the time. Change your vice presidents. I'm here to say it's total nonsense. Nobody's ever voted against any presidential candidate because who their vice president was. And if you look at Kamala's numbers, they're not that far off from where every other mocked and ridiculed and loathed vice president has been.
Agreed. Remember,
if you look at Kamala's numbers, they're not that far off from where every other mocked and ridiculed vice president has been. So you're saying she's not quite as good. She's only slightly worse than your average joke of a vice president. Well, that's obviously nowhere near good enough because, as we just said, Dan Quayle never became president. He never could become president. So the idea that, well, she's not that far off from Dan Quayle, yeah, that means she's never going to be elected president, which means you have a big problem because if you take Joe Biden off the ticket, you're going to have to find an excuse that takes her off the ticket as well, which we'll get to in a moment. But assuming you don't take Joe Biden off the ticket, you also have a problem because, and look, we don't want to get morbid or demonetized, so we will say that, we hope this doesn't happen, but actuarial tables being what they are, we'll say it is statistically likely that if Joe Biden is reelected, she will have to finish his term, right? And so that's why it's a problem either way. You can't get Biden off the ticket unless you can also take her off the ticket, because she can't win. And if you keep Biden on the ticket, people are afraid that she's going to have to take over, right? And they'd rather elect they'd trust their dog in the White House before they would trust her in the White House. So that's where this is a major problem, a major headache for Democrats who want to win right now. And the hidden truth here in all of this, and I've said this before in the show, and Russell has as well, this is the real reason why Biden picked Harris, because he knew that if he picked a competent vice president, they'd have forced him off the ticket a year ago. They'd have said, no way you're running for a re-election. In fact, you're resigning now, and your VP is taking over. If Stacey Abrams, another black woman, just to show this is not about race or gender or anything, if a black woman or anybody else, any other VP capable of doing the job were in that VP role, Biden would have been out on his ass a year ago. But the reason why he's allowed to even contemplate running again is because he picked, I believe on purpose for this exact reason, a vice president that was just a complete non-starter. And now here these clowns are trying to make the case that she's not that much worse off than Dan Quayle. Dan Quayle? Are you kidding?
Compared to all the other lepers, she only has 2 less toes.
Right.
So what are we talking about here? Yeah, all of this is just such a load of horseshit. I mean, I understand they do a show 5 days a week. They got to talk a lot. But, this is you just wonder the mind of somebody who fucking still takes this seriously. And I mean, I guess we know who it is from the numbers on the viewers on MSNBC. I mean, it's elderly boomers.
Yeah. But how could you watch this? Here, they go on.
It's like a spike. It's like a spike in my head to watch this stuff.
Yeah, brutal.
Isn't his bad?
Agreed. Remember Potato with Dan Quayle?
Yeah, exactly.
Potato. But you're absolutely right. But I think going back to our earlier conversation, the cultural existential anxiety in the country makes this particular issue a little bit different, right? The idea that the possibility of a black woman being the president, right, enters into that kind of swirl of grievance and concern. And so even David Ignatius...
See, this is the other line of bullshit that MSNBC has to toe, because they can't bring up the study or the citation by the Census Bureau that we just brought up at the top of the show, citing that people are poorer than they were at this time last year, and 83% of Americans feel the same or worse about their economic prospects than they did during the pandemic lockdowns. They cannot provide an economic analysis because their viewers are disproportionately represented in that 15% of people who do feel that they are better off because they have a PMC audience. And so they just have to recycle the same narrative that this is all about racial anxiety. This is all about fear of progress on the part of the deplorables, on the part of the rubes. The rubes just can't stomach a black woman in the Oval Office, and that's what this is all about. They have to parrot that narrative because that's all they have to assuage the anxieties and I would argue the guilt of their PMC audience for the fact that their president has been a catastrophic failure on every front. They have no answer for that. So they have to keep going back to the idea that, no, we stand for progress, and it's those deplorables that are standing in our way because they are anxious about progress. They are fearful of progress. This is a line that's been repeated for as long as I have followed politics, and it's a line that I used to swallow hook, line, and sinker. I know Russell did too. And here you can see how ridiculous it is from the outside looking in once you've broken out of that mindset and out of that bubble.
This is what I don't understand. They vote against their own economic interests. I don't know why they do that. If you're poor, why don't you vote Democrat? Why do you vote Republican?
Right? Fuck it. It's for those people. We might cover this on Wednesday. I came across a Vox article today where the guy was he's covering a book by two Harvard political scientists explaining how the founders were overly concerned with the dangers of majoritarian tyranny. And as a result, they opened up the door to minorities, i.e. the Republicans, to seize the government by manipulating the unwieldy structure that they put in place to stop majorities with bad ideas from executing those ideas without having to go through so many checks and balances that theoretically some branch of government would stop the bad idea from happening. So he's arguing, well, you have a Republican minority that's seized the country and locking up the gears of government largely because they're exploiting the way that the founders set things up to prevent a majority from taking over. But they didn't account for a minority exploiting that. Okay, so that's all well and good. That's fine. That's kind of interesting. But the article is fucking incredible in that it talks about a collapsing American democracy and people voting increasingly for right wing and people like Trump. He never uses the word economics. He never uses the word poverty. He never uses the word jobs. Never. The entire fucking article. The only explanation is that it's racial anxiety. It's white people afraid of being displaced by other groups. There's no other explanation for why anybody would not support Democrats. And he never suggests that Democrats are equally to blame or even partly to blame for what's happening, right? For the undermining of democracy. It's purely right-wing Republicans being supported by white people with anxiety about losing their privileged position. Nothing else. There's no analysis beyond that. And that's what you see in this segment as well. Like they just can't, not only can't they critique the Biden administration specifically, it goes far beyond that. They can't critique their entire political project of the last several decades. They can't critique the entire Clintonian Democratic Party, which is still what we're living in.
I mean, they can't even do they can't even critique Kamala Harris, which most people who share their ideology are at least able to do. But they can't even do that. They can't even do that. Here we go. Let's see if we can get through most of this.
Controversial piece.
Right.
It gave us Karen Bass and people to keep us from reading it as racial. But we know that the real worry here is, a black woman. That's the real concern.
I don't know. If Karen Bass were the vice president, then Joe Biden would not be president anymore. If Karen Bass were Biden's running mate, Karen Bass would be the president right now. Biden would have resigned. If Stacey Abrams were his running mate, Biden would not be president right now. Stacey Abrams would be.
These people need racism, they need sexism, they need homophobia, they need transphobia, because without all of those things, they have to get into a critique of capitalism.
Right.
And that they cannot do. They need every explanation for social ills except for the explanation.
Right, because Donnie Deutsch inherited his father's advertising company for north of $200 million. And then I think he sold it for less than he inherited it for. So he's not a businessman. He's not a branding expert. He's a rich kid. Right.
He didn't.
Right. All right, now let's cut to the rest of this panel. This is Jennifer Palmieri, who was a Hillary Clinton advisor in 2016. And then I forget this other guy's name. I used to know his name, but I forget. He's a Boston guy.
Yeah, I forget his name. All right. So I haven't watched these things in so long. And these people are such fucking interchangeable fucking androids. And, when we were preparing for the segment, I had the computer low, and the image is small.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I'm on a tablet, so I couldn't see it really well. And I kept mistaking these people for other people. So I thought she was Claire McCaskill. And, Keaton kept being like, no, that's not Claire McCaskill. That's Jennifer Palmieri. And I'm like, okay, so I haven't watched any of this kind of news in a very long time, and it's small, so I can't really see it very well.
Mike Barnacle, thank you, Rick. That's his name.
That's right. Beyond that, they're all like the same fucking person. Like, look at her. You're telling me she's not like on Claire McCaskill's timeline? Like she's not, the younger Claire McCaskill beamed in from a time machine? Like, they're all the same fucking person. Like, you could just take one out, plug another one in. They all sound the same. They all talk the same. They all offer the same opinions. They all have that same smug tone of insidery knowledge. Like, they're all just cocks,
Oh yeah, that's why one day it is Claire McCaskill, one day it's Jennifer Palmieri, right? Same thing. You swap them out as needed.
And you're gonna get that take.
All right, now listen to this take.
I'd say about her. I mean, first of all, the notion that that he would not keep her is ridiculous because for number A, it's
the notion you wouldn't keep her is ridiculous. Says the advisor to the Hillary Clinton campaign, says the loser of the most winnable election ever. She's giving advice about who should be on the ticket and who should not be on the ticket.
It's admitting defeat. It's admitting a mistake. You would never do that. Also, I mean, black women voters, best voters in America, they would be, all of a sudden, everyone would rush to her side. All of a sudden, black women, white women, everybody would be on her side.
I'm sorry, what evidence do you have to support that claim? They had a chance to rush to her side in the 2020 primaries. They didn't. She was polling single digits. She was polling 5th place behind Andrew Yang in her home state of California. Andrew Yang got totally blacked out, wasn't allowed to hardly spoke at any of the debates, hardly got any press coverage, and he was out polling her in her own state, her home state of California, which is a massive state. So how does a guy with no advertising budget, no airtime, no oxygen given him by the media, how does he outpoll her in her home state if she has this support of people of color and women and young people that Jennifer Palmieri is claiming? Oh, they'll have her back if you try to push her off the ticket. Really? Really? First of all, whoever has Joe Biden's back at this point would have the back of any Democrat who ran, because you on MSNBC would tell them that they have to have their back. And everybody who's voting for Joe Biden are people who just take their orders from you guys anyway. So the idea that like the voters that the Democratic voters have any agency at all is nonsense. Whoever's left in the tank for Joe Biden is going to do whatever the fuck Jennifer Palmieri tells them to do anyway. It's about getting the swing voters. And Kamala Harris isn't getting a single swing. I mean, it's a joke. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, this panel and our whole political class really is a really good demonstration of what happens when there's no accountability for failure. Because as you point out, these are a bunch of fucking losers. These are a bunch of losers. I mean, Palmieri's a fucking loser. McCaskill too. McCaskill only won when she did win because she ran against a guy who tried to argue that a woman's body could shut down pregnancy if she didn't really want the sex. Okay, right. Like yep. she basically beat a werewolf. The next time she wasn't running against someone like that, she fucking lost.
Out. Yeah,
she got blown out.
It wasn't close.
As soon as she loses, what do? They put her on fucking TV to give political strategy insights.
And by the way, the year that she lost re-election was 2018, the blue wave year. She got clobbered.
Right.
In the Senate.
That is how fucking terrible she was. And they literally brought her on to talk political analysis. So this is when
once
you
again,
know.
To avoid confusion, this is not Claire McCaskill. This is the woman that
this is not
for Claire McCaskill. This is the other political genius, Jennifer Palmieri, one of the senior advisors to the Hillary Clinton campaign, whose track record is, of course, even worse than McCaskill's.
Right. But I'm lumping them all together because even on their own terms, even the way that they justify their elite status based on meritocracy, even that is completely collapsed. I mean, not just them. Fucking, people often comment all these Iraq War cheerleading fucking goons. They all have fucking contracts with these fucking networks. You got Bill Kristol. David Frum, all these fucking people are paid millions of dollars when they should be shunned. If it were really a meritocracy, these people you'd never hear from these people again. As soon as their acts in government blow up in the public's faces, they get jobs as commentators. I mean, at that point, you're really dealing with a dissolute aristocracy. How is this different from an aristocracy? That's exactly why aristocracies don't work, right? Because you wind up with the incompetent supporting the incompetent.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, especially going out and traveling, it's just incredible that the United States continues to occupy this position of power. And it's very clear. I mean, you don't have to leave the country to figure this out. It's not sustainable. No country this fucking absurd and badly managed can maintain a dominant global position for very long. We're just living off the fumes of past accomplishments now.
All right, let's keep going.
But more, I traveled with her recently to Iowa. I don't think Mike Pence had people show up, cheering throng showing up at the airport to greet him, or excited standing ovations, or big lines at HBCUs. She's on college tour right now. Like, that doesn't happen to other vice presidents. But the other thing that people, when Biden's not doing well in polls, it's because of young voters and voters of color. Okay? Yeah. That is why. So where is Kamala Harris really uniquely able to speak and motivate voters? It's that group, and that's what you see her out on the...
Once again, no evidence for any of that. No evidence for any of that, as we said earlier.
Campaign trail talking about. It's about Dobbs. It's about voting rights. It's about the economic record. And Dobbs. And when I went with her to Des Moines, it was about Dobbs because they had just passed a 6-week abortion ban. And you want to talk about passion and an audience.
She can speak to that beautifully, effectively, aggressively, and in a way people at this point, the majority of Americans are.
I should have pulled this. Now that I hear Mika say she can speak to that beautifully, don't you remember when... now I'm kicking myself for not pulling this video. But after the Dobbs ruling came down, they said, well, what should you guys do now? And she's like, well, what do you mean do? She gave some very clumsy answer to that. Yeah, God damn it. I blew that one. I should have had that one. But yeah, that's how beautifully and eloquently and passionately she speaks about that. Here's the zinger of the segment, folks, coming up right now.
very concerned.
When you look at like what actually has to happen for this reelect, she's arguably the most valuable running mate that a president has had in a while.
She's the most valuable running mate that the president
That is
any
amazing.
president has
That is
had
amazing.
in a while. The fact that she is clearly the biggest liability as a running mate that any president has had in a while is the only reason she's not the president. If she were an asset to the president, she'd fucking be president because they don't want Biden to run again. Most voters don't want Biden to run again. Most insiders now are shitting their pants that he's going to lose. So if what you said had any basis at all in truth, she would be president. Like the only reason she's not the president is because she's a massive liability. And you spin that as she's the greatest asset to a sitting president in a while in terms of vice presidents. Just astounding. Absolutely astounding.
Well, this is a result of the incentives, right? Like, look, you got a bunch of fucking incompetent losers who could not run a bodega sitting here opining about the nation's politics. To keep that job, they have to keep the people in power happy, right? That's how they keep that job. So they just say whatever shit the entrenched Democratic Party and their donor class want to hear. And it doesn't matter how outrageous it is because there's no consequences for that. There would only be consequences for telling the truth.
Right.
If one of them went on there and said Kamala Harris is a liability and they need to take her off the ticket, they're going to get calls, right? They're going to get calls from the Biden White House. They're going to get calls. As long as they say shit like that, they're good, right? I mean, that's their job. Their job is to just spread whatever propaganda is going to make the people in power happy. And as you can see from the fact that they even have these jobs, competence and credibility is no barrier to entry.
Of course. Exactly. Folks, before we wrap on this segment entirely, I do want to, because this is a related story. If you remember on our show last Sunday, 1 week ago, this evening with Extra Bulla, we did the segment on Hunter Biden's indictment on the gun charge. And I said this Hunter Biden legal drama could be what the Democrats use to force both Biden and Harris off the ticket for 2024. And I tweeted out here, called it, not that this is happening, but here you have an op-ed in The Hill. Pardon Hunter and drop out. How Biden can spare his party, his family, and his image. So now you have it right there, folks. You have in The Hill already the birds are starting to chirp. This article here makes basically the exact same argument that I made, which is that they can use all this Hunter legal stuff to get Biden out of the race so that he can, care for his son, and so his son's legal issues don't become a drag on the campaign. And they can use that same excuse to sideline Harris as well. The article makes a slightly different argument for how they would sideline Harris. They just say that by Biden choosing not to seek re-election but not resigning, that would create an open primary in which Harris would lose. I think they could stretch the Hunter Biden excuse a little further and say that the whole administration is now compromised in the sense that there is a conflict of interest administration-wide. They could say, well, we don't feel comfortable running anybody from the Biden White House given Hunter's legal trouble. So he makes a slightly different rationalization for why they would sideline Harris, but that op-ed, go check it out. I just showed you the headline there, makes the exact same point that I knew a lot of Democrats would make, because the Hunter excuse is the best excuse to get rid of both of them. They need an excuse that's good enough to get both of them off the ticket. They can't use Biden's age. Biden's age doesn't work because Biden's age doesn't solve the Kamala Harris problem. If he's too old, then you got to go with Harris, right? They need an excuse that's big enough for both. So I just wanted to...
well, now if she loses in a primary, you don't piss off the 12 people who would be offended if you didn't let her run.
The thing is, I think it's too risky to let her run a primary because I think she could win a primary. I mean, it would be. I could see her winning a Democratic primary. I think the Democrats are that dumb. I mean, she might not be able to get past the superdelegates. She might win a plurality, but not a majority, because I don't think the party brass has any confidence in her. But she still polls near the top of Democratic alternatives to Joe Biden. Don't forget, these are the people who dominate Democratic primaries are people who watch that Morning Joe segment and say, you know, you're right. She's the greatest asset to a sitting president in modern history.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. But I mean, Gavin would probably win because he's in the club too, right?
Well, the thing is, the media would go to bat for Gavin because they know that he's the stronger. Right. And ultimately, the voters would do whatever the media told them to. Eric Rousseau, thanks for the $2. I want Judge Dredd to oppress me, not RoboCop. Yeah, should get some. They should actually put some like funny character wardrobes on those RoboCops. You know, have some fun with it. Blue bots matter. Yes, says Virtuoso. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate that. Zach Boyles. Asterisk pandemic response. Gotcha. Okay. By the way, Zach, you should tune into our patron stream tomorrow. So our patron show is going to be tomorrow. I could do it in the afternoon if you want. Maybe there was a miscommunication. We'll nail down an exact time, and we'll send out the time in the morning. Okay. Yeah, that's doable for me.
Because otherwise it's going to be 2 nights in a row of this.
Of midnight, 1 a.m. Yeah. Okay. Tusker, thanks for the $5. Turns out Furby was the start of the robot police state. Yeah, I remember Furby. Wow, that's
it was actually autocorrect.
What's that?
It's actually autocorrect.
Oh,
autocorrect was of AI taking over the world.
Yep. DC, thanks for the $5. Welcome to Dystopia Now, the War is Peace report. Amy double plus and Goodman. Sorry, it took me a second to read that, but good one. Thank you, DC. Appreciate that. Wow, a lot of super chats. Thank you guys for your kindness tonight. VGer must evolve. It's knowledge that has reached the limits of this universe, and it must evolve. What it requires of its God doctor is the answer to its question: is there nothing more? Is that a quote that I'm not getting?
That is a quote from Star Trek the movie.
Okay, yes,
which
I
was
would not know.
The very first Star Trek film with the original cast.
See, it's good that Russell's here for this because he gets a lot of the sci-fi references that RoboCop story sort of, invites. Quintessential, thanks for the $25. Canadian Parliament was literally a standing ovation for Ukrainian former SS. Look it up. Yes, I did see something about that today. Maybe we'll cover that on Wednesday. But I did that came across my Twitter feed. Yeah, it was some crazy. Wasn't that the guy who said that we defeated the Russians in World War II, when really we, with the Russians, defeated the Nazis in World War II? Is that what that was? I saw something like that on Twitter, and I think that's the same thing because it was a Canadian guy who said that. But I will check that out. Thank you very much. Willie Bragg. Hey, Willie. What's up? Good evening, Do Dissidents. Good evening to you, sir. Thank you for the donation. I accidentally overslept for this show, but we'll listen to this show at work tonight. Beautiful. It'll be on replay for you, Willie. Thank you very much. 2 more segments to go, folks. Let's go to this next one. Ibram X. Kendi is in some trouble here. His own student body really started this investigation. They wrote a very long and thorough report on this. But this is from WBUR in Boston. Boston University launches inquiry into management culture at the Center for Anti-Racist Research. Shocking that a college professor who claims to care about others actually only cares about himself. That's very surprising to hear that. Following sudden layoffs last week at Boston University's Center for Anti-Racist Research, the school said it is conducting an inquiry into the center's management culture and grant management practices under its leader and founder, the scholar and activist Ibram X. Kendi. In a written statement provided to WBUR Wednesday, a BU spokeswoman said the university had initially launched an examination into the center's grant management practices after receiving complaints in the wake of the layoffs, which was first reported by the Boston Globe. That inquiry has now expanded to include the management culture at the center after additional information came to light, according to BU's statement. Quote, "We are in the process of convening an internal group that will examine grants management and productivity, and we will be asking an external consultant to review the organizational climate and respond to concerns that have been raised with management and culture," BU's interim president Kenneth Freeman said Thursday in a statement. News of the sudden layoff sent a ripple of shock around the BU community, given the stature and prominence of Kendi, a nationally renowned scholar on race and best-selling author of the 2019 nonfiction book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. Kendi, 41, originally founded what used to be known as the Anti-Racist Research and Policy Center in 2017 at American University in Washington. BU recruited him to move the program to Boston University in June of 2020. At the time, BU leadership told WBUR the new Center for Anti-Racist Research would, quote, "bring together researchers and practitioners from across the university to engage around issues of racism and racial justice." Staff at the center was tasked with pursuing multiple projects, including the creation of a racial disparities database, an anti-racist graduate degree program, and a media publication. That multimedia platform, The Emancipator, will continue and is not impacted by the recent layoffs, BU spokesman Colin Riley told WBR last week. That data tracker is one project that reportedly has yet to lift up off the ground. The data tracker I'm talking about here, that next paragraph, sorry, I didn't realize I hadn't mentioned that yet. Kendi was a guest on WBUR's Radio Boston as recently as June 2023 to discuss a new graphic novel adaptation of his 2016 book, Stamped from the Beginning, The Definitive History of Racist Ideas in America, which earned the National Book Award for Nonfiction. He also appeared on the show in May, during which Kendi said the center was in the process of building and really even launching very soon a racial data tracker, which has yet to lift up off the ground. That's like the Vanguard's van, is the racial data tracker.
Yeah. It's coming.
Yeah. So Kendi did issue a statement in response to the layoffs, which is another mouthful. So, Russell, before I go to his statement, do you want to give your take on this? Because you found this story, and I'll just say very, very briefly, is a very brief point that I've made a million times on this show. This is why, you want to get semantical about critical race theory and what it really means versus what it means now. And, okay, I mean, that's a hill some people can choose to die on if they'd like. Broadly speaking, don't think anything you learn in college is a revolutionary idea. They will not teach you revolutionary ideas at university. The whole point of the university system is that you buy in to the system it gains you access to for tens of thousands of dollars, and then you spend decades of your life, if not your entire life, paying back that debt. So the idea that anything they would teach you, no matter how radical it sounds on its face, the idea that anything they teach you at any of these places is in service of overthrowing the system is just nonsense on its face. These are gateways into success within the system. They are not institutions intent on subverting it.
Right. They were given $43 million fucking dollars. Okay. $43 million.
From corporations like Stop and Shop, Jack Dorsey
made a big donation. Jack Dorsey, $1 million. Okay, so this is part of the problem, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about, funny enough, a little bit with Morning Joe and that Vox article that I mentioned. All right, you got a combination of things with these that open the door to hustling grifters like Kendi and Robin DiAngelo and the rest of these fucking half-bright crackpots that have jumped out in front of the parade of racial tension in America to make themselves rich. You look at Kendi charging $20,000 a speech. I mean, look at the people who came in the past. I have a dream. I could get paid $20,000.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right? I mean, these people are fucking disgusting, fucking grifters. And that's been obvious with Kendi for a long time. You're talking about somebody who's argued that the cure to racism is racism, that the only cure for past racism is current racism, current discrimination. He wants a federal department of anti-racism. These are the brilliant ideas that are pushed into the forefront of American intellectual life. All right, so you got a few things going on here. One, once you've dealt with the low-hanging fruit, right, unequal accommodations, right, voting rights, once you've attacked that, once you've attacked, basic legal frameworks of discrimination, now it gets much more difficult when you still have racial disparities after that. You can address the failings of capitalism to deal with a problem like this, where you have an entire group of people that, because they were brutally enslaved, have been held back economically, and try to address it from that end. Or if you don't want to address the underlying economics that continue to keep that population in a deprived position relative to the white population, then you address it more as a religious matter, right? It's the racism in people's hearts, the racism in people's minds. That's a very vague, unaddressable, really impossible to deal with thing, which is great if you're a grifter, right? It's like the war on terror. How do you win it, right? You're gonna go on this crusade against racism in the human heart. I mean, that's again, in keeping with the theme of the show, that's a religious crusade. That's not addressable. And even if it were, it still wouldn't actually solve the problem. Because in a capitalist system, if you don't have any capital, you're unlikely to get any. That's how it works, right? The more you have, the more you get. That's why Donnie Douche is on that fucking channel, even though he never accomplished anything or worked a hard day in his fucking life, okay? So you have an entire population that, because of historic discrimination, doesn't have capital. You have to address it from that angle, but they don't want to. They don't want to, because that is a lot more difficult than letting fucking hustlers like this guy and D'Angelo et al. Run around, charge crazy amounts of money for speeches to present crackpot theories that, incidentally, much to the benefit of the capitalists, keep everybody fighting, suspicious of each other, keep people from being able to get together, because you're presenting the idea that everybody has this original sin of racism in their heart. You're not allowing any possibility that people can just be one human race all getting along. Not only that, I mean, a lot of these ideas, and certainly the ones Kendi and D'Angelo expound, have taken the basic idea of universal humanism, the idea that we can, that our fundamental humanity is core, and basically called that a racist idea. Right, one of the best ideas to come out of the civil rights movement, the idea that our common humanity is more important than any particular identity characteristic. I would argue that underlies what's best in the liberal worldview. Using the term liberal in its older sense.
Well, sure. And in Robin DiAngelo's case, it's even more insidious than that. I mean, she directly, by the way, she's a white woman, for those of you who don't know. She gets paid to go and address racial tensions in the workplace, i.e. go to workers who are making $12 an hour at a grocery store and explain to them why they need to be nicer to each other. Well, yeah, she charges thousands of dollars per hour to do that, obviously. But she goes to literally divide the workforce. right? Literally tell
Right.
workers what's
Right.
wrong with them for not getting along better, right? You talk about an anti-class solidarity activity. There's really nothing more you could say about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this, but it raises a lot of interesting questions that I think we on the left really need to contend with. And a lot of people on the left are afraid of these questions because you have so many people who don't understand that this is a grift, that don't understand that how destructive these ideas are, and don't understand that a lot of these ideas are make work projects for the PMCs, because once you present this, it's the war on terror. If the human heart is incurably racist, you have jobs for DEI departments forever, right? Because it's never going to be solved. That is a very hopeless, depressing vision of humanity. And it is certainly not a solution that is soluble. Let me ask you something. Even if you believe that this is true, on what planet do you think that telling people that our differences are much more important than our similarities, which is what they very pointedly point out, that your identity is paramount, and it's racist actually not to see it that way. Okay, so you are a minority of the population. Why on earth do you think it's a good idea to convince people, when we've spent a couple of generations convincing them that their common humanity is the most important thing, and we've tried to dismantle racism that way? Why on earth do you think it's a good idea to reconvince the majority that our racial differences are paramount? Do you really think that ends in a good place? Combining it with a message of antagonism and arguing for racism? These people are crazy, stupid, grifting maniacs that are leading the whole fucking society off a cliff. And it is good to see somebody like Kendi actually facing this kind of scrutiny. And one would hope that it helps undermine the basic philosophy and approach to these questions that he represents. Look, if these people represented a threat to the system, they wouldn't be on TV. They wouldn't be lauded in the New York Times.
They wouldn't go from university to university getting gig after gig. They'd be thrown out the way Norm Finkelstein was thrown out, the way Cornel West was thrown out.
Of course. You look at D'Angelo. I mean, you want to see the vacuousness of this entire fucking movement, this entire philosophy. Okay, so white people are all racist. There's racism and everybody's sorry. Okay. Why the fuck would you let a white woman redefine Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech for you? Why on earth would you allow? Why doesn't she get canceled? A white woman presumes to explain to you that Martin Luther King didn't really mean what people thought he meant for the last 50-some years. She's going to explain to you what he really meant by content of her character, and it didn't mean what people thought he meant. This fucking crazy ass frizzy-haired white woman is going to tell you what Martin Luther King really meant. Any anti-racist movement in which that's tolerable is not worthy of that name. And that you're going to let Robin DiAngelo explain to you the meaning of Jackie Robinson's career? Really? And we're supposed to take this seriously? That you're going to admit this fucking crackpot to start expounding on questions like that and coming up with the most asinine explanations imaginable? And this is supposed to be a cure to our racial ills? Does it look to you like these ideas are curing anything or helping anything or making anything better? These people are enriching themselves at the expense of society. And the sooner they get pushed off the stage, the better.
So let's go to Kendi's statement in response to this. This was a 4-parter. A week ago, I had to make the hardest decision of my career and lay off a number of talented and committed staff from the BU Center for Anti-Racist Research to ensure our long-term sustainability and impact. We are doing our best to support our affected colleagues during this difficult time of transition, and we welcome Boston University's inquiry into the center's operations. While CAR is not alone amongst nonprofits working through new economic realities and slowing philanthropic giving, my decision, pardon me, it's a little small there, to restructure the organization has elicited very strong opinions, not just about the layoffs, but about my management of the organization. I made this decision not out of financial distress, as suggested by some, but to put in place a new structure that would support the mission of CAR for the long term. There will always be people who critique the job someone else is doing, but I stand by my decision to take the long view for CAR, especially when racial and social justice organizations are under attack. I'm proud of the many accomplishments of CAR's talented and committed staff, such as the Emancipator, which has more awards than years of existence, and our reports, research, and policy teams, COVID racial data tracker, amicus briefs, events, engagement with organizers, national edge, okay, blah, blah, blah. And I'm excited about our upcoming plans to build the first ever residential, God, what is going on here? Because, sorry, the graphic is blocking. Residential fellowship program for anti-racist intellectuals, creators, and students. For those who provide me constructive feedback and who are genuinely supportive of our mission, thank you. It helps me to remember that CAR is only 3 years old. In June 2020, CAR was an urgently needed startup at a challenging time in our nation's history. We started in the midst of a pandemic in an all-virtual setting for several months, making management and culture building more challenging. Okay, so he's basically blaming this on the challenges of the time and that these are sort of mundane issues that would face any sort of organization. That sounds like what he's doing. I don't need to read the rest of that word salad. How fucking boring was that? God, wish I could have those 2 minutes. I'm sorry, folks. That was terrible programming on my part.
I mean, I hope they're going to go into the books and look at where this $43 million went, because you can try to slice, dice, and explain it any way that you want. With what they have produced, there is no way that $43 million was not, best case scenario, grossly mismanaged. But frankly, when you're talking about $43 million and you're talking about a fucking organization headed by a fucking scumbag that won't fucking show up to a fucking supermarket opening for less than $20,000, I'd be very fucking surprised if they dig into these books and don't find some funny business going on.
I mean, yeah, that seems like a lot of money to mismanage in good faith by accident and for no reason, right? It seems like a big sum of money there for that. So that wraps that segment. We'll do some more super chats. Zach Boyles, Burlington businesses wrecked by flooding. Yes, they had major floods in northern Vermont this past summer. Tyson versus Big Tree destroyed last bit of credibility. What was that in reference to? Which segment was that? Interesting. Thank you, Eric Rousseau. Appreciate it. Idiocracy was prophecy. Rondo has electrolytes. Yes, that was prophecy for sure. No doubt about that. Thank you, sir. Oy vey, please tell me you've seen the Hill Rising segment. Thank you, Egg64, for the $5 with Amisha attempting to blame RFK for his ex-wife. What? No, I didn't see that. I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't watch. Pardon me, I didn't watch that. I might have to watch that. I will take a look. I'm a little behind on stuff. There's just a lot of stuff to keep caught up on here. All right, we got a bunch of Rumble rants here. Bonzo Beans says, less guardrails. Check out Peter Santinello's latest video with Titus in Kentucky. Fun. Is that on, where is that? Where can we find that one, Bonzo Beans? You can email us too, Bonzo Beans. You don't have to keep giving us $1 to answer our questions back. Hiking up Half Dome in the 90s blew my mind. Steep, smooth rock face. Just grab some work gloves from the pile and hand to the cables. California. And he asked if we're Trekkies. Russell is. I'm not.
Trekkie, that's exaggerating it. I appreciate Star Trek with anybody who appreciates the golden age of Star Trek. I'm pretty horrified by what they've done with it, and I've stopped watching the current iteration.
Bonzo Beans, CRQ, we got a blitz of these for $1 a piece. I want a DD garbage can. A mid-sized DD garbage bag. We should put that in our merch store. We should make 18-gallon garbage bags and sell them. We'd make a killing on those. A due dissidence toilet bowl, toilet paper, and diapers. Thank you for $1 a piece. Bonzo Beans, appreciate that. And keep her tracking. What's that?
We'll do a Marcel Duchamp thing. We'll send a signed toilet to people.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I apologize, folks, if our tech is a little wonky. Russell is on a little bit of a delay. That's why some of these transitions are a little less smooth than usual. But that's what happens when you're around the world. So bear with us. Keep her tracking. Thanks for the Rumble rant. Thank you guys for bringing the Rumble rants this evening. Appreciate it very much. I mentioned this in the segment. I bet Norm Finkelstein must feel some vindication right about now, considering he demolished Kendi in his latest book. Yeah, he actually interviewed Cornell recently, and they did bring that up. I haven't watched that video yet. And I know some people in the chat, one guy in the chat says that Cornell wasn't forced out. He quit. Well, he resigned over a tenure dispute, right? Harvard was denying him tenure, and so he quit. Yeah. So they I mean, he technically quit, but they basically pushed him out. I mean, they pushed him to that point. The point is, when you are in the Cornell West or the Norm Finkelstein camp, you're not welcome in those circles, right? I mean, radicals are not welcome in those circles. Oh man, that's a difficult screen name. Kaladin Cat Bless, thank you for the $2. By the way, we have a great Rumble audience tonight, which we love to see. 217 strong in the Rumble chat now. That's great. Please hit that follow button while you're over there. Very important. Don't come upon us and then not see us again. So hit that follow button, and if you're here on YouTube and you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Kendi literally argues segregationist talking points and how to be anti-racist. Excuse me, I couldn't believe how many black people I knew praised him for years. I'm also black. Yeah, well,
that's what,
go ahead.
When I first started to delve into this stuff, that's what really struck me. I was like, okay, it doesn't sound like there's a lot of daylight between these beliefs and Richard Spencer. Like, okay, so you believe race is paramount? David Duke believes race is paramount. You believe that people should be separated. So do they. Like, there were some Klansmen who liked Malcolm X for that reason. Before his trip to Mecca and his conversion, when he was preaching kind of a black separatism, they were like, yeah, maybe we can work together on this. I mean, you look at it's, and a lot of people make this argument with a lot of these ideas. It's a theory that past a certain point, progressives, right? They feel a need to progress. But what happens when progress becomes regressive? Like, is there a point on the curve where you can only go backward? Right? Because that's how a lot of this seems. Like you've reframed segregationist arguments based on a different premise. But the end result is the same, segregated dorms, right? Like we're back where we started.
Yeah, I mean, what sustains momentum for nonprofits and activist groups is not necessarily progress, right? Like all momentum is not progress, right? There's a difference between progress for society and momentum for people whose living depends on them, being able to push a certain cause, right? It's important, I think, to sort of parse.
To present the idea that change is always positive. And I would argue society comes up, if you look at it over time, with more bad ideas than good ones. And you hope the good ones stick. But like the idea that because it's a new idea, it's it's probably a good one. I mean, phrenology was a new idea once, right?
Right.
Was that a good idea?
Well, that's self-evident. I mean, positive change is always positive, right? And it's about seeing where there are opportunities for positive change, right? I mean, you could take some of these ideas get sort of filtered through, critiques where you can make arguments against progress, and it's not that you're against progress, it's that you have to discern what is actual progress versus what is actually just creating forward momentum for organizations that do not represent the goals or interests of the society at large, or in the most extreme cases, and you could argue that this whole episode is indicative of that, not even representative of the interests of the communities that they claim to represent the interests of, right?
Quite the contrary. Quite the contrary.
Yeah.
But I mention that because when you push back on these things, they'll tend to bring up the ideas that were good ideas that worked out, right? They never consider the idea that they're promoting phrenology. Like that never occurs to them. Right, like maybe you're one of the bad ideas, because when you look at the whole of human history, odds are your new idea is a bad one. Most new ideas are bad ones. There are very few that actually represent progress. People always think that they represent the lunch counter strikes. What if your ideas represent communes, right? Like things that really society didn't adopt because they weren't workable or they weren't really good ideas, and more of those occur than not.
All right, let's do a few more super chats, and we have one more segment. Zach, good to have you back, Zach. Fascist lockdowns during the pandemic response. I see what you did there, PF. Clever. It's a good one. Tusker, thanks for the $5. Gotta go, guys. Kamala just rallied every woman in the U.S. to her side.
I mean, because that sentence more than anything in that segment demonstrates how much these people face no consequences for being absolutely fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
How could you even say such a thing? They're gonna Kamala Harris.
We don't usually cover corporate media stuff anymore. Like, when was the last time we ragged on MSNBC? But that one just jumped out to me as being especially ludicrous. MSDNC should have to pay people to watch it. Indeed, Clue Blue. Tusker, again, thanks for the $5. Why is there not a single copy of any of Stalin's works available in any library branch in my state? But I can get Mein Kampf in 80%. Well, you're in Arkansas, right? I mean, that might answer it. Your state. Maybe. I think the answer is hidden in the question.
In New York, that's an interesting question. Like, I've never found New York libraries to be understocked with anything, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a great library in our hometown now, actually. It's really cool. All right, one more segment tonight, folks. Thank you very much for being here. Hit that like button wherever you're at. Hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. Hit that follow button over on Rumble. Very important. Got a big Rumble crowd in there tonight, so make sure you hit that follow button. Very, very important. Gavin Newsom is, being floated by different people at different times, different media figures as, potential last-minute substitute for Joe Biden in the 2024 presidential race. And he's taken every opportunity to be a good boy and defer and say, no, Joe's in great shape and Kamala's the heir apparent. I'm totally not going to get in. So, he's keeping himself in good standing with the voters and everybody who's counting on him to say exactly that. But if they call on him, he will be there. And it's looking more and more like he is positioning himself to get that phone call. And here is more evidence of that. Newsom vetoes progressives' bills on transgender children and self-driving trucks. There were actually 3 bills that he vetoed this week, and there could be dozens more coming down the pike here since his vetoes are due over the next few weeks. So this is from Politico. Governor Gavin Newsom issued a trio of vetoes late Friday evening that are sure to anger his progressive allies, including an unexpected rejection of a bill requiring judges to consider children's gender identities in custody disputes. On the losing end of the Democratic governor's actions are 3 mainstays of liberal support: LGBTQ rights groups, labor unions, and immigration advocates. Newsom has long touted a progressive record while also acting as a moderating counterweight on to an overwhelmingly Democratic legislature. So I'm going to read very briefly summaries of each of these 3 bills that he vetoed, and then we'll take them one by one when we talk about them. First, Newsom dealt a stinging defeat to LGBTQ activists by vetoing a bill that would have asked courts to consider a child's gender identity when it comes to custody decisions. The legislation, Assembly Bill 957, was authored by Lori Wilson, who is herself the parent of a transgender child. In his veto message, Newsom largely sidestepped underlying political implications by warning against by warning against allowing the government to dictate in prescriptive terms that single out one characteristic, legal standards for judges to apply. He noted courts could already consider parents' handling of gender identity, meaning what he cited is that courts could already decide that if a child is being abused or tormented for who they are, whether it's, their sexual orientation, religious beliefs, gender identity, that could go into a judge's factoring of, okay, is this child safe in the home? Right. But that bill wanted to take it a step further and make explicit considerations for the gender question. So that was the first one that he vetoed. Newsom also vetoed a bill requiring human drivers to be on board in self-driving trucks. The measure was a priority for organized labor groups like the Teamsters, who fear artificial intelligence and automation will lead to widespread economic upheaval and tumult around self-driving taxis in San Francisco, where city officials fought an expansion of malfunctioning vehicles that have snarled traffic and blocked first responders. Newsom's rejection was not a surprise after his top business official opposed the bill, arguing it would stifle innovation. The governor wrote in his veto message that regulatory agencies were well equipped to oversee the emerging technology. And finally, the governor turned back a bill barring California's prison system from sharing information about incarcerated immigrants with federal officials, fortifying California's quote-unquote sanctuary laws. In a veto message, Newsom said he believed current law strikes the right balance on limiting interaction to support community trust and cooperation between law enforcement and local communities. This is not the first time Newsom has broken with immigration activists. In 2019, he rejected a bill barring private security personnel from arresting immigrants in California prisons. Several hundred more bills are awaiting his signature or veto before the October 14th deadline, including many that will further test his balance between business interests and labor. So obviously the LGBTQ veto got the most headlines since it was the most jarring. And we could talk about all 3 of these if you want. I think in terms of positioning himself for a general national race, the first and the third vetoes probably help him. I got to say that self-driving truck one is going to kill him in the Midwest if he is the presidential nominee. I mean, that's how a lot of working class men make a living, driving trucks. So that's going to really sting. That one makes no political sense whatsoever. But anyway, you want to take these in whatever order you like.
They already have self-driving taxis there?
These are self-driving trucks.
Already? Like on the road?
Yeah, I'm not sure if they have them actually on the road. That was news to me, too.
Traffic and what?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be something I wouldn't trust either. But from a safety standpoint aside, I mean, from a job standpoint, you start running in the heartland on self-driving trucks. I mean, that is an absolute non-starter with the people who determine who wins the presidential election. I mean, Trump won the Rust Belt in 2016 by running up margins amongst the very groups of people who, you know, feel like they could not survive a change to automation. Andrew Yang said this in the 2020 primary. He says, if you look at the counties with the heaviest Obama to Trump swings, it was the counties that automated the most jobs out of existence. That was the number one predictor of an Obama to Trump swing voter was, do they live in an area where automation has killed jobs? And so, yeah, that self-driving truck thing just seems like political suicide. But the others seem like he is, you know, angling more toward what he considers, you know, the mainstream. And as a political calculation, at least, those are probably right.
Well, these politicians always, you know, if they're skillful, and it seems like he has a strategic mind, they always figure they got to do what's expedient to please the people they got to please now, and if needed, they can talk their way out of it later. Right? They'll introduce a policy to protect jobs as part of my platform as president, or retraining, or although Clinton kind of soured the retraining thing forever by not actually delivering on any of it. The trans bill, yeah, I mean, that's smart politically. The conservative media has been having a field day with that bill for a while. So, yeah, you would almost have to veto that if you wanted to run for president. Like, you couldn't sign that. There's no way.
And look, I think he was right to veto it. I mean, I would have vetoed that too.
Well, as he points out, a judge can take that into account, right? Like
the kid is being abused for who he is, whether he's trans or gay or whatever. The judge can say, okay, we're not going to stick the kid in an abusive home. That's already a factor.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's a virtue signaling bill.
Exactly.
Right. Look how far out California is going. Yeah, you don't need it.
But also, there's a dip. But it's not just a virtue signaling bill. There is actually a difference because the current law, as I understand it, allows judges to consider the overall health and safety of the child. So if the kid is being abused or tormented or taunted because he's trans, the judge can say, well, this is not a safe or welcoming home. But there's a difference between being tormented for being trans or from a parent, say, not wanting to put the child on puberty blockers yet, not out of hatred or contempt, but out of concern, right? There's a big difference there.
Right. Yes, and that's why this bill was getting a lot of coverage. And of course, look, it should have been getting coverage for the reasons you're saying. It should have been getting coverage everywhere. But of course, the liberal media is not gonna cover it. And some of the issues that raises. So yeah, no, I agree with his veto, but in terms of the politics of it, yeah, definitely. With the self-driving trucks, in the end, you're not going to be able to stop this. Yeah, I mean these driving jobs. Once
you're not winning Michigan, when the Republicans plaster the airwaves in Michigan, talking about how Gavin Newsom vetoed a bill to man self-driving cars,
I understand.
You are toast. I can guarantee you that.
Sure, I mean within his state, he has Silicon Valley, so it's expedient for him now.
Right.
I'm not saying that doesn't hurt him in a national race. I'm just saying in the end, you're not going to be able to stop this. Like those driving jobs are going to go away. Once the technology is perfected, and I'm pretty confident that they will work out the kinks eventually, all those driving jobs are going away. I mean, look, there's a broader question of all the jobs that are going away. We've talked about this. Society's really not prepared for it. Between AI and that kind of automation, how many jobs are going to be left? Like the basic premises of capitalism are not going to work for very much longer. Like there's just not going to be any jobs. So you're going to have to go to a UBI. Like it's just not even for the middle class. Like we're seeing how many jobs AI can do, right? Like what's going to be left? Only like uniquely human things that require a uniquely human skill set are going to be left to do. Everything else is going to be automated. You're going to have to completely change the premises of economics.
Right,
like
because even the white-collar professionals who survived the transition to AI, their labor is devalued by AI. So even the ones who don't lose their job entirely are going to be worth less in a market because they're more replaceable by AI. Right. So that's going to drive wages down.
Right.
It already
is.
So
I'm saying,
that's why the median income has fallen, right?
Right. The politics aside, in the end, nobody's going to be able to stop this. It's going to happen. If you're a truck driver, you're going to lose your job. If you're a taxi driver, you're going to lose your job. If you're a Uber, DoorDash, whatever, man, all those things are going to go away. Not tomorrow.
It's going to take some time.
They're going to go away.
It'll take a long time. Well after 2024, which is why it's politically suicidal in the short term.
For now, I'm just saying in the long term, it's gonna happen, and nobody they're not going to create a law that's going to stop that from happening, because in the end, other people are going to do it, right? Like so we're going to have to do it. And what was the other thing he vetoed?
The other thing was the immigrant bill. Here, I'll read this for you one more time. Sorry. The governor turned back a bill barring California's prison system.
Yeah, I got it. Again, I mean, he's positioning himself for a national run. And particularly, the public mood is definitely souring on immigration right now.
Well, he knows that the sanctuary city, sanctuary state line is going to be used against him, and he knows that carries a lot of potency.
Well, they're talking in New York. They're talking about getting rid of the sanctuary laws.
Oh yeah, Eric Adams
it's
is
because
really.
Yeah, at first Hochul was against it. From what I understand, she's coming around because it obligates them to find housing for all comers. So where does that end?
Right. Exactly. And so, those are a trio. Like I said, there could be more vetoes coming down the pike. But, I mean, it's certainly looking like all signs are pointing to they're going to try and stick him in now. Like at this point, I think it's a 50-50
You think
chance,
so?
at least. That's what it's looking like. That's what it's
I
looking
mean,
like
you might be right. You put Joe Biden out on the campaign trail. That's not going to be fucking pretty, and it's not a pandemic. They can't hide him in the basement.
And now with the Hunter thing, they have an out. Like before, they didn't really have an out. They have an out now. The Hunter thing is a good out for them. He can martyr himself for his son, as that op-ed said. And that op-ed that I put up on the screen very briefly there made very much a similar case that I knew they were going to start making, which is, look, we can't have this Hunter thing be a distraction in the campaign. He's old. He did his job. He beat Trump, blah, blah, blah. You'll placate the libs that way. Kamala can't run either because it's a conflict of interest because she served in his administration. So no, she can't run. If she tries, we'll try. We'll put all the money behind Newsom anyway. It looks that way. Newsom is going to be at the Republican debate, I think, giving a counter speech or something like that. And then he's debating Ron DeSantis in November. Yeah. So they're deploying him in some very nationally prominent roles. And now these vetoes, now he's clearly like these vetoes are definitely him angling for a national run. If not this time, next time.
Next time.
But it looks like something's up. It really does, because it's just so difficult to imagine Joe Biden getting through 14 more months, much less, another 5 years on the job, right? I mean, he's going to go and campaign because don't forget, the election's not this November. It's next November. It's 14 months. He's going to be in even worse shape by this time next year. How is he going to do it? His polling against Trump is collapsing now. Against Trump! The guy's good. The guy has 5 opportunities to land himself in jail between now and the election, and you just had to poll Trump up 9. Call that an outlier if you want. Trump is running even. Trump is now leading in the national average of polls. And so, yeah, I mean, I think they're getting ready to put him in. I really do. It looks like that to me. And I was not on that page. Because people have been speculating about this forever, and I was always, nope, Biden's the incumbent. They're going to ride or die with him. That's it. That's the way it goes. I really don't think so anymore.
Trump is so unpopular. I mean, I mean, maybe Newsom can beat him. I've been skeptical of that because there are so many negatives that come with being the governor of California. Like there are so many things to beat him up with. But then again, I mean, nobody really likes Trump. They just like him better than Joe Biden.
And California, for all its problems, it's still executive experience presiding over the fifth largest economy in the world or whatever it is. I mean, it's still something.
It is, but they can have a field day with LA and San Francisco.
Oh, sure they can. and they will. And they will. But, every candidate has vulnerabilities that they can hit them with. And, I mean, those are significant. There's no doubt. Look, he's got a lot of significant vulnerabilities.
I mean, San Francisco is like a failed state at this point.
Well, San Francisco, sure, of course. But so are many cities. I mean, the sort of urban plight is a theme all around the country. So I don't know how uniquely vulnerable that makes him on that issue. And look, bottom line is whether you think he's a good candidate or not, the only two candidates they could run instead of him are Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And Harris is a total non-starter. And Biden's looking more and more like that every day. I mean, it's just really difficult to imagine him running a campaign for 14 months and then serving 4 years and then voters being like, yeah, let's give him 4 years of it. It doesn't make sense. It really I don't buy it anymore. I did for a while. I'll admit I was I can't say I was wrong on that because I don't know that I'm wrong yet, but I've definitely changed my mind on that. We can say.
You thought they were going to Joe Bacala him, and now
I thought they were just going to run him because whatever. I mean, look, he's the incumbent. To switch out an incumbent is a drastic move. You're almost admitting defeat in doing that. So you don't do it unless the situation is so desperate that you feel you have no choice whatsoever but to do it. But I'm sorry, man. So far, this new WAPO poll where he's down 10 against Trump is this outlier. You get a few more polls like that over the next couple of months, he's out. He's gone.
Yeah, you could be right. You could be right. It is such a drastic move. It might have just taken like a few doses of reality to wake them up. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely a palpable shift in the conversation.
Yes,
it was. There is like they might be coming around to this is fucking absurd to run this thing. Like
and the thing is, sorry, they have an out. The Hunter thing gives them an out. It gives them a plausible exit. Saying, well, he sucks, that's not really an out because then you're admitting defeat. You're admitting that your party doesn't deserve a second term, right? His son is under indictment and his run is going to be a distraction when we want to be able to draw a contrast between our party and the Republicans, whose likely nominee is also under indictment. Like, that's a whole bullshit narrative they can spin. They can make something out of that. How convincing it'll be to most people is up in the air, but they have something they could go with there, right? And so, to me, they have to use that excuse if they want a chance at winning. And that's why that Hill op-ed basically made that same argument. All right, should we take the rest of our super chats and get out of here?
Yes. I got a palace to see tomorrow.
Got a palace to see tomorrow. Dave, our patron caller, is on the line. If you want to log on and say a quick hello, you've been waiting the whole time. So you just have to hook up your microphone and turn it on, and we can admit you to the chat. In the meantime, we will be taking some super chats. RBGH fam, thanks for the $5. I noticed Joe didn't go with the perfect example of Sarah Palin and old warmonger John McCain. Well, that's interesting. I think he was talking about vice presidents to sitting presidents, not to candidates.
Right.
But yeah, for sure. Zach, thanks for the $4.99. Left will come around. People tried to call JD out Yet days later, explicit gender exploitation for pro-war and pro-LLIK journalist shows how bad it's got. People tried to call JD out, yet days later... yeah, I didn't get that one. Do you understand that?
Zach is like our very own Oracle at Delphi.
Well,
you have to interpret his words properly, but if you do, it will unlock the mysteries of the universe.
Well, thank you, Zach. Eric Torres, thanks for the $2. It was a pleasure to burn. Zach, 1 year, Corpus will be filled with virtual AI agents. Yes, well, I think, the AI is definitely coming for the white-collar jobs for sure. No doubt about that. Okay. Some say they didn't have a pandemic before, like the dictionary before they changed it. Thank you, Zach Boyles. Appreciate that. Thank you to Yasim Miller for the $2 super sticker here. Cool Blue. Thanks for the $4.99. Appreciate that. If you imagine general election nomination for Gavin, his VP cannot be Kamala due to the 12th Amendment, same state. Interesting. Well, yeah, no, they would have to. No, she's not going to be his VP. They'll have to pick somebody else. Perhaps the D's may consider Whitmer of Michigan. That's probably a politically smart pick, even though she is a complete lowlife. But then again, they're all lowlifes. So, I mean, from a purely political standpoint, excuse me, she might be a smart pick. But yes, that is interesting speculation. We got a few more Rumble rants that we're going to take, but David, if you're ready, we got time for a quick hello. You're a new patron. Thanks so much for your support, my friend, and thanks for calling. Good to meet you.
Good to meet you. I've joined the program in the super chats before, but it's nice to talk to you both face to face.
What's your YouTube screen name? We'll probably remember you.
YouTube, this is it, J. David Morrison.
Oh, okay. All right,
yeah,
cool.
no, I like to. I could explain the origins of what the J and J. David Morrison stands for, but that's we'd be here for hours. It's actually Gerald, Jarrell, Gerald Morrison, but everybody says it's Jarrell, and I have to go through the whole rigmarole thing, and I've gotten so many variations on that name, so I figured, fuck it, why don't I just J. David Morrison? Makes it sound more sophisticated.
Yeah, I like the whole the whole first initial
like J. Jonah Jameson.
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks, Russ.
Yeah.
All right. No, I just wanted to say, I'm thinking if Newsom is going to be the guy, and it's looking more and more like it in 2024, I was probably just like you, Keaton. I was probably thinking, no, they're all in on Biden. But the more I think about it, the more it's probably going to be Newsom and Ayanna Pressley from here in Massachusetts. I'm in Lowell, Massachusetts. So I'm thinking just...
Is that what you think?
Yeah, either that or I'm taking definitely Ayanna Pressley. It's definitely I can't imagine anybody else. I mean, she's energetic, she's African American. I mean, it's everything that the Democrats want. She's she connects. She would connect in the South. I could foresee that, or feeling that Stacey Abrams.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to speculate running mates. I mean, we'll take it one piece of speculation at a time. I mean, right now, I think Newsom is it's looking like he's definitely setting himself up between the debate with Ron DeSantis in November. I think they're sending him to this Republican debate to give like some kind of response. I'm not 100% clear on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what they're doing. These vetoes. I mean, these are clearly national election vetoes, right? I mean, there's no reason to veto them in California if you don't have aspirations beyond California, right? The only reason you would veto those bills is if you have aspirations bigger than that, which we know he does. I mean, we know he wants to be president someday. The question is, does he jump in now? And it looks like they're getting him ready for it. You know, he won't jump the gun on them. He'll wait for the call. You know, he's not just going to butt in. But it's looking more likely that he's going to get that call, is what I'm saying. Whereas I would not have said that even a month ago. I'd have said, no, they're not going to do it.
Yeah, things definitely seem to be shifting that way. I don't think he would pick Ayanna Pressley. I think you've probably set a precedent that you have to pick a woman now, at least if you're a Democrat. Like, it's kind of like certain Supreme Court seats being held down by Democrats.
Right, exactly, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, now that there's been a woman VP, if it's a man running, it's almost going to have to be a female. But are they going to feel like it has to be a black female? I don't think so. Yeah, they're Lori Lightfoot. You
never know.
I don't fucking think so.
No, Whitmer makes sense. From a political standpoint, she makes sense. I mean, she's awful. She's absolutely horrid. But from a political standpoint, she makes sense. If we're just being purely partisan about it, if we're just thinking, okay, what makes the most political sense? Yeah, that's probably his safest bet.
Touche. Wow.
Well, sir, thank you for calling in. Where are you from?
I'm actually from Lowell, Massachusetts, home of the Industrial Revolution.
Oh, that's right. You just said that. Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Well, thank you very much for allowing me to join on in.
Great to meet you, and thank you for your support, my friend. Appreciate
salute. All right.
Salute.
Salute.
Yo, Russell, have you tried any Ouzo while you're there, Greece?
Man, I haven't yet. I usually
Ouzo's good. Ouzo will knock you on your ass, though. That'll put some hair on your chest, and that'll knock you over if you're not careful with that.
That's why I'll wait until I'm towards the end of the trip, and I don't need the energy. Actually, I'm going to Mattel. I'll actually be doing kind of vacation-y beach stuff, so maybe there I'll drink some Ouzo.
Ouzo with a little ice on it, it's nice. I think it needs ice because it's
I've had it.
Yeah.
I've had it. I just haven't had it here.
Yep, indeed. Long story short, Russ, is the United Palace uptown in the hood?
The United Palace?
Yeah, some of you guys are a little crazy tonight. Cryptic super chats.
It's a full moon back there.
It's a full moon.
What? And why is there all this fucking talk about Mein Kampf in the chat? Every time I look at the chat, somebody's talking about fucking Mein Kampf. Have we been infiltrated? What's going on?
Who the hell knows? Oh, this is my dad. Yeah, my dad's all for Feinstein-Fetterman. He thinks that should be the ticket. Newsom will never win the trust of the Feinstein-Fetterman wing of the party. Yeah, that would be a fun one. That would be a fun one. Thank you. Police Robot says, Paul Chu, member for 3 months. Thank you, sir. Police robots should unionize, to get better pay. Indeed, that's going to be the next frontier.
That'll be next.
That'll be next.
Oh, yeah.
Zach, thanks for the $2. Ukraine spokesperson, pro-war and ending journalist. Yeah. Yo, that was so crazy. So that I don't know if you saw this, Russell.
I saw this.
Yeah. So the Ukrainian spokesperson, I guess she's an American who moved to Ukraine. So I put out a tweet that I deleted, and I won't say what it was here because I don't want to tempt the YouTube gods. But I made a tweet saying that Sarah, her name is, looked like Zelensky, and people got on me for it. They're like, how, don't you think this is punching down or something like that? I know you're not a woke show, but don't you think this is a little weird? I honestly did not know that she was a trans woman. I just thought she was a woman who happened to look like Zelensky. And so I kind of made a little joke like, hey, isn't it weird that the spokesperson is a woman who looks just like the male president? I didn't know she was trans. And so I didn't mean it as a dig like that. Like, I just think that's kind of a mean-spirited joke to make fun of their looks if they're a trans person, a trans woman who looks masculine. Yeah. So I didn't intend it that way. So I took it down once I realized that. But it's funny, I didn't realize it. I just thought, wow, this is weird. She looks like Zelensky with a wig. But yes, I did say that. That was as George W. Bush said at Trump's inauguration. He says that was some weird shit. Yeah, that was some weird shit.
No, people always come to me. They're like, "Russ, you're so trans." Keaton, man, it's fucking Keaton.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah.
It's not me.
I didn't. I swear to God, I didn't know. and so the person. There was one person who called me out for it very explicitly. And I mentioned after I deleted it, I sent him a message. I said, just so you know, I honestly had no idea. I didn't know. Zach Boyles, thanks for the 199. I hate yous for not reading chat when confused. We read all your chats, man. I just don't understand all of them. I mean, what are we supposed to do? I read them all, though. I appreciate it. Baza, thanks for the $5. RoboCop gonna get busted for paying for a lube job with tax dollars. Typical Dem. They should have AI prostitutes. That should be the next thing. Robot prostitutes, right?
Well, they're going to.
Yeah.
They're going to.
You swipe your card, you stick your dick in the hole, and then, you get a receipt when it's done.
No, they already have sex robots.
Yeah. Oh, I mean on the street, like working the subways.
Yeah, I mean,
right
you don't
then
have
and
that
there.
yet. But they already have, like, creepy fucking AI sex robots that can have a conversation with you. It's fucking creepy Twilight Zone shit.
Yeah, no, I'm always nervous you're going to forget to turn yours off before we go live, and it's going to interrupt the stream.
And that's, and mine is mouthy.
Yeah, right. That's how you like them.
I ordered a Jewish one.
Pretty sure den bots are asexual, aka smooths. See, all right, thank you, Zach. Hey, Zach, are you going to let us out of here? Cool Blue, thanks for the 199. Kamala Buttigieg 2024. Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. Pete Buttigieg is also in the administration, so they can also claim he's compromised because he's another rising star with no chance. I mean, zero chance.
Yeah.
Yes. Zach, again, the only best solution is Kamala, Dick Cheney. Yes, 2024. Garble, thank you for the $2. Spaghetti, cheese, meatball, sneeze. See, look at these crazy super chats we're getting. You guys really are living up to your as you know, you guys are
audience on YouTube.
Exactly. I was just gonna say you're not really doing much to disprove the Vanguard's theory about you, which is that you are the most depraved and delusional audience on YouTube. Some Rumble rants here. Diablo Neruda. This is the first time I've paid you guys on Rumble. I'll never pay you on YouTube again. Patreon's still clicking. Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Wherever you can find us, we appreciate the support. Joe Mama 42. Hey, y'all, I'm from Vermont. The show makes me homesick sometimes. I'll ring in tomorrow during member stream, and I'll be on point. Well, thank you. Yes. What time you want to do that? We will send you guys an email first thing in the morning. We'll work that out this evening.
Yeah,
so
we
will let you know first thing in the morning that will go out. But I am not from Vermont. I live about 45 minutes from the southern Vermont border. So I live in the Albany region of New York, but Bennington, Vermont, lovely little town where I also used to work. It's about 45 minutes away. And yes, I love Vermont. Diablo Neruda, thanks for the $1 again. San Francisco is important because of the contrast it highlights. Well, yes, just like New York, just like L.A., it is a very neoliberal town, right? It's a town with a lot of liberal social views, but it is a brutal capitalist town, just like New York. Housing in San Francisco was for a while more expensive than New York. I don't know. Since the pandemic, those rankings have shuffled around a little bit.
I mean, San Francisco is really like a collapsing society. Like it's getting to the end point of neoliberalism first.
Right. Alrighty, folks. Well, I think that just about does it for this evening. Great crowd in here tonight on YouTube. Great crowd over on Rumble. We appreciate you guys very, very much. We'll have a patron stream tomorrow. Those are on Rumble. Those are Rumble exclusive streams, so those are uncensored streams. They're a lot of fun. And so we invite you to sign up at patreon.com/do dissidents. Our patrons are the backbone of the program. We could not do this show without you guys. So if you want to go over there and sign up and support us, you get access to patron-exclusive live streams. We do them typically the second week and fourth week of every month. Both of these last 2 months, we've had complications because my kids had a little bit of a health scare, which we're hopefully, knock on wood, almost out of the woods on. And then Russ had a Wi-Fi issue, so we've had to reschedule it a few times this month. It's been especially chaotic, so we are sorry about that. But generally speaking, we do them second week and fourth week of every month 2 per month, plus a shout out on the show in the credits, and call-in access, which our friend J. David Morrison just took advantage of for the first time this evening. So if you can go help us out there, please do, and we'll see you tomorrow. If not, we will see everybody back here Wednesday night, the 27th at 8 p.m. with Russell. And then on Friday morning, the 29th, that is the last Friday morning show without Russell, because it's the last Friday before he's back. We have our good friend Nick Cruz from Revolutionary Blackout Network co-hosting with me on Friday morning, September 29th. So that's the schedule for this week. We thank you all very much for being here this evening. Until we see you again, please, of course, do be safe and be well.
Courage.
Please clap.